Chapter 322 Crusade against Creek Town. Creek Town was one of the border towns within White River City's jurisdiction. The town was nestled in a desert, and it was so desolate that not even birds would come to lay their eggs. However, such a small town was a popular gathering place for red names and those who walked the path of darkness. Unlike towns, cities like White River City were managed strictly. Hence, red names who had often killed other players for equipment during the initial stages of the game could only find a desolate place like Creek Town to receive quests and level up. Near Creek Town, high-leveled monsters dwelled, ranging from level 15 to level 30, which were perfectly suitable for players at this stage of the game. In Creek Town, red names crowded the streets. Most of these players were above level 15, while only a few were below level 15. The Blood Hand Association, a dark force, managed the town. So, naturally the NPCs here would not kill these red names. On the contrary, the NPCs welcomed these red names. Red names could also receive better quests depending on their crime value, and through completing these quests, they could raise their reputation among the dark forces they served. Guild Leader, there are over 1,000 players in this town. In addition to the NPCs guarding this place, I don't think we can conquer it successfully. After spending a long time scouting, Aqua Rose had obtained a general grasp on Creek Town's overall combat power. Setting aside the fact that there were over 1,000 red names in this town, there were more than 500 NPCs guarding the town, the lowest of which was level 50. Among them there was no lack of elite guards. There was even a few level 70 tier 1 guard captains. If they charged in, the actual number of enemy NPCs might increase further. With only 100 players and 49 guards, they stood no chance at all. Also, if a town were attacked, the NPCs within would not wait for players to close in on them before retaliating. Instead, all of the guards in the town would gather and fight back. Moreover, there was a huge difference between NPCs and monsters. The reason being, unlike monsters, NPCs knew how to coordinate with each other, making them far more difficult to deal with. Furthermore, these red names would definitely try to take advantage of their battle with the NPCs, inconveniencing them at the very least. Moreover, these red names were not easy opponents. The fact that these players that could survive as a red name until now and possessed such a high level indicated that they had strong fighting techniques. Naturally, the equipment they used would be of high quality as well. Killing and plundering was their main occupation in the game, so even if they were not fully equipped with secret silver equipment, at the very least, they would possess bronze equipment or above. If any of these red names were in a guild, they could easily become the elite or even core players of the guild. Moreover, the frequent PKs they took part in allowed them to gain plenty of combat experience, so there was no shortage of experts among these red names. To put it simply, although there were only around 1,000 red names in Creek Town, these 1,000 or so players could easily rival 2,000 elites of Dark Star. Thus, if they wished to conquer Creek Town, the task could only be described with one word: challenging. Of course, we stand no chance against them if we attack normally. However, we have come here with a crusade quest. Shifeng knew how difficult it was to capture a town. How could a crusade quest possibly be easy? If it were, the system would not reward players with shocking rewards and reputation. These red names were usually the bandits. They were not used to being the victims. This time, however, it was their turn to shed some blood. Fire Dance, how are the preparations coming on your side? Shifeng asked through the team chat. The 48 level 50 tier 1 guards Shifeng had recruited were no pushovers. Although these guards could not be used to kill monsters or raid dungeons, they could defend a town or private residence. More importantly, they could also help players complete large-scale guild quests. If not for this fact, Shifeng would not have recruited so many tier 1 guards. However, even though all 48 were tier 1, they were insufficient to deal with all of the NPCs in Creek Town. Moreover, Shifeng had not intended for them to launch a frontal assault on the guards of Creek Town. Among the 48 tier 1 guards Shifeng had recruited, some were rangers and assassins. Hence, Shifeng had tasked Fire Dance and the others to take along one of these guards to lure the Blood Hand Association's NPCs out of town. After all, the intelligence the tier 1 guards possessed was much lower than players. If Shifeng allowed the tier 1 guards to lure the enemy NPCs, they could easily fail. Yet, if players lured the enemy NPCs, due to the great disparity in attributes, the NPCs could catch up and kill the players. Hence, Shifeng's solution was to have players instructing the tier 1 guards individually. We're all ready. We've grasped most of the basic commands, so we're only waiting for your command now, Fire Dance said with a smile. Good. After I initiate the Crusade quest, all of you take action immediately. Remember not to lure the town guards too far. Otherwise they will run back to town. After Shifeng gave a few reminders, he then walked towards Creek Town. Shifeng stopped a few hundred yards before the town, taking out the Crusade order. He then pointed the Crusade order at the sky. Suddenly rays of golden light shot from the Crusade order, and in the next moment, a golden magic array appeared above Creek Town. In the evening sky, this magic array was extremely conspicuous, and it quickly attracted the attention of many players inside the town. A short moment later, the magic elements of this array burst open, and one after another, golden ripples spread from this magic array, enveloping the entire region of Creek Town. At this moment, if viewed from the outside, a protective, golden dome appeared, covering Creek Town. Creek Town System Announcement. Zero Wing has started a crusade against Creek Town. Unrelated parties, please leave immediately. Creek Town System Announcement. Zero Wing has started a crusade against Creek Town. Unrelated parties, please leave immediately. Creek Town System Announcement. Zero Wing has started a crusade against Creek Town. Unrelated parties, please leave immediately. The crusade announcement repeated 3 times, and all of the red names in Creek Town were shocked by this notification. There was actually a guild that dared to capture a red name town. Shortly after, all of the players belonging to the Dark Forces in Creek Town received another message. However, the message this time was from the Blood Hand Association. The message stated that as long as they could successfully defend the town, all players would receive bountiful rewards. Moreover, players would receive achievement points for each enemy they killed. After the battle was over, players could exchange these achievement points for weapons and equipment. Zero Wing sure is kind. They have actually come to gift us money. Do they think they are amazing? Since they dared to come into our territory and make trouble, we'll annihilate every single one of them. The players of Creek Town's blood boiled, their killing intent rose to new heights. Although Zero Wing shone like the sun in mid-sky in White River City, in their eyes, Zero Wing wasn't worth mentioning. After all, they all had impressive techniques and none of them mingled in White River City, so they had no need to fear Zero Wing's vengeance. Even if Zero Wing tried to take revenge on them, they only needed to hide and Zero Wing could do nothing to them. The barefooted are not afraid of those who wear shoes. They were the hoodlums of God's domain, so why would they fear Zero Wing? Inside one of the bars in Creek Town, an assassin clothed in black currently drowned himself in alcohol. The man felt like a piece of ice to others. He exuded a chilling intent that made others instinctively distance themselves. Shockingly, this man was actually level 20, and all of his equipment was secret silver equipment. In White River City, this man would definitely be considered a first-rate expert. This black-clothed assassin was stunned when he received the system announcement, the beer bottle in his hand falling to the ground. Zero Wing? Doesn't that mean that Yi Feng might show up as well? The black-clothed assassin's lips curled upward, forming a sinister smile. The last time I lost to him because of equipment quality. This time, I'm going to take back everything that he owes me. If Shifeng could see this assassin's appearance, he would recognize this person as none other than Absolute Heaven, the assassin that he killed in the past. Chapter 323, Nightmare. To avenge his hatred, Absolute Heaven had worked desperately to improve his techniques and upgrade his equipment. Now, even if Yi Feng were not involved in this sudden assault, he would still give the members of Zero Wing a taste of his new strength. However, just after Absolute Heaven walked out of the bar's entrance, he discovered the golden magic array hovering in the evening sky. This magic array was a result of the Crusade quest's activation, and it would change the NPCs of Creek Town. The guards that had originally been level 50 immediately fell to level 30, while the level 70 Tier 1 guard captains became level 50, the same level as Shifeng's normal guards. Although Creek Towns had been weakened, none of these guards delayed in taking action. The moment the warning bell rang, a storm of guards rushed out of the many buildings within the town. In moments, over 2,000 guards surrounded the town. These NPCs belonged to the Blood Hand Association. At this moment, they had all removed their disguises, and the normal guards had revealed themselves as Blood Hand Association members, while the guard captains were Blood Hand Association elites. Blood Hand Association members, elite rank. Level 30. HP 100, 000/100, 000. Blood Hand Association elites, Tier 1 elite rank. Level 50. 300, 000/300, 000. Why have all the guards become weaker? What's there to fear? Even if they are weaker, can Zero Wing defeat so many NPCs? Besides, we are here as well. If Zero Wing wants to attack, we'll make them suffer the consequences. When the players of Creek Town discovered that the guards beside them had suddenly grown weaker, worry grew in their hearts. However, they soon rid their minds of this worry. Even during its peak, Zero Wing only had around 8,000 members. Moreover, due to the surge of players that had withdrawn from the guild, they now had less than 5,000. Even if Zero Wing had mobilized all 5,000 of its members, in the face of 2,000 NPCs, charging into the town would be nothing more than suicide. At this stage of the game, players had yet to reach level 30. Furthermore, not a single player had managed to upgrade to a Tier 1 class. So, how could they possibly hope to fight against level 30 and level 50 NPCs? In God's domain, such a massive gap between levels was fatal. Begin. Shifeng commanded in the team chat. Fire Dance and the others immediately took action, each of them commanding a level 50 Tier 1 guard as they charged towards the Blood Hand Association's army. The guards Fire Dance and the others controlled were Tier 1 rangers and assassins. Regarding movement speed, they were much faster than the Blood Hand Association members. Rangers also possessed ultra-long-ranged attack capabilities, and they could launch their attacks from 100 yards away. Hence, they were perfect for the role of a lure. Within moments, the Red Names of Creek Town noticed several figures rushing at them with speeds that no players could hope to achieve. In the next moment, these rangers retrieved their longbows, knocking arrows and releasing them. Shoo! The arrows struck their targets, several level 30 Blood Hand Association members, from roughly 90 yards away. Each arrow dealt over -5,000 damage to these level 30 NPCs. If a player received one of these arrows, they would die with a single hit. The Rangers' attack attracted the attention of the Blood Hand Association NPCs. Without hesitation, over 1,000 Blood Hand Association NPCs unsheathed their weapons and charged. Seeing this, the Rangers turned on their heels and fled. Very quickly, they had drawn these Blood Hand Association NPCs away from the city. Weren't we being attacked by players from Zero Wing? Why are there level 50 Tier 1 NPCs as well? The Red Names were confused. They simply stood where they were, not following the Blood Hand Association NPCs in pursuit of the Tier 1 Rangers. Level 50 Tier 1 NPCs only needed a single hit to kill them. If they did not possess life-saving skills, fighting such an NPC was suicide. Moreover, they were all Red Names. If they died, they would pay a severe penalty. At the very minimum, they would lose 2 to 3 levels and a majority of their equipment. Naturally, they had to weigh the costs and benefits before they took action. Not to mention, they had never intended to charge with the NPCs since the very beginning. Instead, they had planned to take advantage of the confusion while the Blood Hand Association NPCs and Zero Wing clashed. Now, however, those NPC guards had lured away all of the Blood Hand Association NPCs. At this moment, even they began to wonder whether they should join in the pursuit or not. Just as these Red Names contemplated their actions, the Blood Hand Association NPCs had distanced themselves several hundred yards from the town. This is bad. The Blood Hand Association NPCs are gone. One of the Red Names realized the situation and shouted, "We need to go help them. If Zero Wing manages to kite and kill them, we'll be finished." This player's words shook everyone to attention. Unfortunately, these Red Names were neither a single group nor of a single heart. Most importantly, they all understood that the first person to charge into battle would also be the first person to leave. Even though they had realized how serious their predicament was, none of them were willing to take action first. Instead, they all chose to stay put and do nothing at all. None of these Red Names had discovered that, at this time, Shifeng had already led the remaining 40 level 50 Tier 1 NPCs in a charge from another direction. When capturing a town, the NPCs were not the most troublesome obstacle. Instead, it was the players residing in said town. If the players and NPCs inside the town were allowed to cooperate, without absolute strength, it would be impossible to capture the town successfully. Hence, the most important thing Shifeng needed to do right now was to get rid of the players. Only then would it be the NPCs' turn to die. After players died, they had to wait half an hour before they could revive at the graveyard. Furthermore, if these Red Names died, even if they had the determination to continue fighting, they would not have the strength to present a challenge. The penalty they suffered was simply too severe. Although the 40 level 50 Tier 1 guards did not possess as much HP as the Blood Hand Association elites, they still had over 100,000 HP each. Moreover, the opponents they faced right now were not NPCs but players. It would only take a single attack to kill a player instantly. When all 40 Tier 1 guards charged at the red names of Creek Town, they were like a group of ferocious beasts as they killed everything in their path. Although there were many red names in Creek Town, they were completely unable to defend themselves against these guards. Shield warriors and guardian knights could take 2 hits at most. In the blink of an eye, red names died, one after another, littering the ground with bodies and equipment. In contrast, although the red names attacked continuously, due to the level suppression of over 30 levels, the damage the red names managed to deal was negligible. 1,000 level 20 players were required to take down a single Tier 1 guard, let alone 40 guards. With the 40 guards sharing the damage from the enemy players, their battle recovery alone made up for the HP they lost. Not to mention, among the 40 guards, there were also clerics and other healer classes. A casual heal from one of these NPCs could replenish over 10,000 HP. Within tens of seconds, over 200 red names of Creek Town died, while all 40 guards that Shifeng led still had full HP. The disparity in strength caused the red names to despair. These NPC guards are too strong. We need to retreat and meet up with the Blood Hand Association NPCs. You bastards from Zero Wing are shameless. You actually brought level 50 Tier 1 NPCs to capture a town. If you have the strength to face us, don't use those NPC guards and fight us fairly. The red names cursed Shifeng at the others as they fought the NPCs. Shifeng could only chuckle at their words. Immediately, he instructed the NPC mages to cast their AoE spells. Suddenly, rain of fire descended from the sky. In the next moment, thunderbolts struck down at the red names. When cast by the Tier 1 mages, the Tier 1 AoE spells could display their true might. The red names of Creek Town died in batches. After several AoE spells landed, the battlefield fell quiet. Of all the red names that had resided in Creek Town, only 400 or so remained, while everyone else was dead. This scene not only shocked the players of the town, but Aqua Rose and the others were also stunned. A single wave of AoE spells became a nightmare for the red players of Creek Town. Run. Nobody knew who shouted, but every surviving red name agreed wholeheartedly as they fled in all directions. Let's start the slaughter. A majority of these red names wear mysterious iron equipment. Killing one of them will profit us more than killing a small boss. Such an opportunity will be rare in the future, Shifeng laughed. Following which, with Aqua Rose in the lead, both players and NPCs chased and killed the fleeing red names. When Shifeng was the last remaining on the high slope, he suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Now that no one is around, you can come out, right?" Shortly after the battle began, Shifeng faintly sensed someone spying on them from nearby. Moreover, the gaze that he felt contained a cold killing intent. However, it was only a feeling, so Shifeng had not paid too much attention to it. After his team left, however, this feeling became much clearer. He then activated the Golden Stigmata's skill, Omniscient Eyes. The skill allowed him to perceive everything within 100 yards, and all stealth effects were useless in the face of this skill. And as expected, Shifeng discovered an assassin slowly creeping up on him from behind. However, even after Shifeng spoke, the assassin continued to hide. "Do you think I am playing a trick on you?" Shifeng unsheathed the abyssal blade and immediately sent a thundering flash behind him. 3 green arcs of lightning streaked across the air. In the next moment, a black figure suddenly appeared and swiftly dodged the attack. It was none other than the assassin that Shifeng had killed before, Absolute Heaven. At this moment, shock filled Absolute Heaven's chilling gaze. Someone was actually capable of discovering his presence from such a long distance away. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Chapter 324, Times have changed. So it's him. After not seeing him for some time, his techniques and equipment have improved quite a lot. No wonder he could get so close to me before my senses picked up on him. Absolute Heaven had left a deep impression on Shifeng. During the time Shifeng had searched for the Ice Blue Devil Flame, this expert assassin had very nearly killed him. Afterward, Absolute Heaven had ambushed him again when he led Blackie and Lonely Snow to level up. At that time, Shifeng's life had hung on by a thread. Since Shifeng started playing God's Domain in this life, although he had made plenty of enemies, Absolute Heaven was the only person who had almost taken his life. After such a long time, Absolute Heaven would definitely be much stronger now that he had accustomed himself with the combat style of God's Domain. If Absolute Heaven had not been careless and underestimated Black Flame, Shifeng's alternate identity, by not concealing his killing intent, Absolute Heaven might have successfully ambushed Shifeng. Now that I know you're there, you aren't going to escape? Shifeng revealed a calm smile as he turned to Absolute Heaven. Escape. Absolute Heaven revealed a hint of arrogance on his chilling face. I admit that you're strong. It is as expected of the guild leader of Zero Wing, Black Flame. According to my estimation, your strength should be on par with Yifeng. Last time, Yifeng only managed to kill me because of my own impatience. It was my mistake to use all of my skills on Yifeng so early in the fight. Otherwise, with his strength he could not even dream of killing me. Now, although I have revealed myself, do you really think that you can kill me while I still possess all of my skills? Indeed it is as you say. Unless all of your skills are on cooldown, it will not be easy to kill a top-tier assassin like yourself. Shifeng acknowledged Absolute Heaven's power. However, times had changed. Although Absolute Heaven had improved, Shifeng had also raised his strength. Since you're so confident, why don't we make a bet? A bet? Do you think that you can fool me? Originally, I intended to kill you today to show Yifeng that I, Absolute Heaven, have returned. Since I can't kill you, you can tell Yifeng this. When I, Absolute Heaven, wish to kill someone, that person will definitely die. Absolute Heaven laughed coldly. He then turned around to leave. If you want me to pass your message on, sure. However, the condition is that you need to escape. Shifeng activated the 7 Luminaries ring, using the Aura of Time skill, Absolute Time. He instantly charged at Absolute Heaven. Absolute Time prevents enemies within a range of 50 by 50 yards from using any skills or tools for 20 seconds. With this skill activated, all of Absolute Heaven's skills were in a similar state as a forced cooldown. Meanwhile, an assassin that could not use skills was like a tiger without claws or fangs. You think I can't escape? Absolute Heaven smiled confidently in reply to Shifeng's taunt. He then tried to use blind on his opponent. If he could do so, he could escape from this place easily. However, Absolute Heaven immediately discovered that he could not use any of his skills. Suddenly he started to panic. Nobody understood better than Absolute Heaven just how fragile an assassin was without his skills. However, Absolute Heaven was no ordinary player. He immediately calmed himself, turning around to flee. Absolute Heaven quickly concluded that such a powerful skill had to have a limited duration. It was impossible for the effect to last indefinitely. As long as he could drag the fight out until the duration of this effect was over, he could fly freely like a bird. At this moment, however, Shifeng had already appeared at Absolute Heaven's back after using silent steps, not giving Absolute Heaven an opportunity to run. Soundlessly, Shifeng slashed the abyssal blade at Assassin. Absolute Heaven responded swiftly and used his dagger to meet Shifeng's sword. When the silvery gray abyssal blade collided with Absolute Heaven's dagger, he felt an immense pressure flowing from his dagger to his hand. That pressure then suppressed his entire body, forcing Absolute Heaven to kneel on the ground involuntarily. Such power, as expected from the person who killed Ming Sha. Absolute Heaven silently clicked his tongue. If he had not personally experienced Black Flame's might, he would never have imagined that Black Flame's strength was actually on par with a boss monster. At this moment, Absolute Heaven finally realized why a great expert like Ming Sha had been forced into a constant retreat and could retaliate against Black Flame. Shifeng brandished his sword over 10 times repeatedly. Each slash was as abrupt as a thunderbolt and as heavy as a mountain. Faced with this brutal assault, Absolute Heaven had no other choice but to block as many attacks as he could. However, although Absolute Heaven could reduce the damage he received by blocking with his dagger, his HP still decreased, frustrating him greatly. Absolute Heaven inwardly cursed Shifeng for being a despicable and shameless bastard. Shifeng actually used force to suppress him. Shifeng had not used any techniques and simply relied on brute force to brandish his sword. Shifeng's way of battle, which traded a life for a life, prevented Absolute Heaven from displaying any of his techniques. If Absolute Heaven could use his skills, he could easily escape his current predicament. Unfortunately, none of his skills would work. Despite being a powerhouse, Absolute Heaven felt powerless. Just as Shifeng was about to send Absolute Heaven to his death with a bombardment of attacks, Absolute Heaven suddenly felt that this situation was extremely familiar. It was just like when he had ambushed Yifeng. Back then he had used a magic scroll to seal all of Yifeng's skills and had even frozen his movement, turning Yifeng into a fangless tiger. At that time, Yifeng could only escape and had not dared confront him head-on. Meanwhile, his current situation was almost exactly the same as the last time he encountered Yi Feng. Only this time the roles were reversed. If he had known Black Flame possessed such a skill, he would never have closed in on Black Flame. Worse, he had even wasted time by chatting with his enemy, giving Black Flame ample time to set a trap for him. He had practically sought out his own death. It seems that I'm really going to die this time. With only a thread of his HP remaining, Absolute Heaven could already see his demise. He was currently a red name. If he died, he would lose all of his equipment. His level would also plummet. At that time, he would no longer have the ability to exact revenge on Yi Feng. However, just as the abyssal blade was about to collide with Absolute Heaven's body, it suddenly froze in midair. What? You're not gonna kill me? If you wait until I can use my skills again, you won't be able to kill me. Absolute Heaven laughed coldly as he watched Shifeng curiously. As I said before, I want to make a bet with you, but you thought that I only said those words to fool you and kill you. Now that you only have a thread of your HP remaining, it will only take me a casual wave to destroy your weapon, equipment, and level. However, I'll repeat my offer. Are you interested in placing a bet? Shifeng asked, smiling as he returned the abyssal blade to its sheath. It seems that you're really not trying to cheat me. Then was the fight your way of proving that you wish not to kill me, but to make a bet instead? Absolute Heaven asked, greatly confused by Shifeng's actions. He could not figure out just what was going through Shifeng's mind. Of course. Otherwise, why do you think I would even bother fighting you? Does it look like I have too much time on my hands? Shifeng laughed bitterly. Absolute Heaven was suddenly rendered speechless. What? You still don't believe me? Shifeng's expression turned cold. No. I believe you. Tell me then. What do you want to bet? At this moment, Absolute Heaven grew interested in the bet Shifeng proposed. Bet your life. Shifeng said straightforwardly. Bet my life? Isn't my life already in your hands? Absolute Heaven nearly cursed at Shifeng. Shifeng shook his head, then slowly he said, You previously mentioned that as long as you can use your skills, you can escape from me easily. Isn't that right? That's right. Absolute Heaven answered without hesitation. Although Absolute Heaven had already witnessed Shifeng's frightening strength, he was still confident that he could flee from this battle. Simply put, I don't believe you. So let's make a bet. While you can fully utilize all of your skills, we'll see whether or not you can escape. What do you think? Shifeng asked with a smile. Chapter 325, Life and Death. Are you toying with me? Absolute Heaven glared at Shifeng, trying to figure out just what was going through Shifeng's mind. However, no matter how he examined his opponent, he still could not see through Shifeng, who had currently disguised himself using the demon mask. Absolute Heaven could only see a middle-aged man with a faint smile in front of him. No matter how hard Absolute Heaven racked his mind, he just could not figure out what Shifeng was trying to do. After nearly taking his life, Shifeng suggested gambling his life away. Was there a need for so much trouble? Wouldn't it be easier just to finish him right now? Why would I toy with you? Shifeng laughed. Fine, I'll make the bet. What will happen if I survive? What if I die? For his own pride and honor, Absolute Heaven refused to die. If you escape safely, I'll do one thing for you. If you die, you'll have to do one thing for me. How about it? At this moment, Shifeng finally revealed his true intentions. He had done everything so far all for this single goal. One thing, huh? Absolute Heaven considered it carefully. After giving it some thought, he looked at Shifeng and said, If I ask you to kill Yi Feng, will you do it? Absolute Heaven's request caught Shifeng off guard, but soon after he let out a soft chuckle. In White River City, everybody knew that Black Flame and Yi Feng were the two symbols of Zero Wing. Never would Shifeng have imagined that Absolute Heaven's request would be something like this. He had to admit that Absolute Heaven was indeed ruthless. If the public learned that Black Flame had killed Yi Feng, it would greatly affect Zero Wing's reputation. At the same time, it would also affect Black Flame and Yi Feng's reputations. However, be it Black Flame or Yi Feng, only a few core members of Zero Wing knew that both identities belonged to a single person, which was Shifeng himself. Meanwhile, Absolute Heaven requested that he kill himself. The difficulty of this request was indeed quite high. What? Didn't you say that you'll do one thing for me if I win? Absolute Heaven smiled complacently. He then said, My request is so small, yet you hesitate. No, I just didn't think that you would make such a simple request. Originally, I thought you would want to kill me once. After all, I am the guild leader of Zero Wing, and Feng Xianyang of Underworld possess a deep hatred of me. As long as you manage to kill me and pass on the recording to the higher-ups of Underworld, you will receive Underworld's attention. Your position in the organization will soar as well, Shifeng mentioned. If Black Flame died, the prestige that Zero Wing had managed to accumulate due to his efforts would crumble. At this moment, Absolute Heaven suddenly came to a realization. He had actually forgotten about such a possibility. The loss and humiliation Dark Star had suffered caused Feng Xuanyang's hatred of Zero Wing to soar. The guild he had nurtured with so much effort had actually fallen into such a state. Naturally, he would not let Zero Wing off the hook. Hence, Feng Xianyang put out a bounty to all members of Underworld stating that as long as anyone from Underworld managed to kill the higher-ups of Zero Wing and cause trouble, the rewards would be bountiful. As long as someone could accomplish this task, they could gain fame, status, and wealth. If one could annihilate Zero Wing, receiving a promotion from outer member to elite member of Underworld would be a simple matter. There were not many elite members in Underworld. They were few and far between, but those who obtained the prestigious title would also become influential in reality. Every day, there were countless outer members in Underworld working as hard as they could to become official members. Only after becoming an official member could one possibly become an elite member. If he, Absolute Heaven, could kill Black Flame, the guild leader of Zero Wing, there might actually have a chance at receiving the promotion to that elite group. Even if it were not possible, at the very least, he could still become an official member. Alright then. I agree to the bet. Let's start after I have fully recovered. Absolute Heaven directly agreed. After a few moments, Absolute Heaven's HP and stamina recovered completely. Shifeng then took out a gold coin, suggesting, "I'll toss this gold coin into the air. The battle will start the moment the coin reaches maximum altitude and begins to fall. How about it?" Okay. Absolute Heaven was momentarily speechless when he saw Shifeng use a gold coin as a starting signal. Was he not afraid of losing the gold coin? Currently, Absolute Heaven only had around 20 silver coins in his pockets. Even so, he was considered relatively wealthy. Yet, Shifeng had actually taken out 5 times that amount and treated it like a toy. Comparisons are indeed odious. Let's start then. Shifeng tossed the gold coin into the air. The coin soared upward. Only when it was around 4 meters above ground did its speed begin to slow, the coin faintly showing signs of stopping and succumbing to gravity. Absolute Heaven focused his gaze sternly on the coin. The moment it started to fall, he intended to use Blind on Shifeng immediately. He would then activate Wind Steps and start running towards the town. In such a wide open area, if he attempted to use Vanish to enter stealth mode, Shifeng would discover him easily. However, it would be a different story in town. Although terrain on the way to town was complex, aside from Vanish, he possessed other life-saving skills and tools to help him get through this distance. As long as he could reach the town and use Vanish, even if Shifeng possessed excellent senses, it would be impossible to locate him. However, from start to end, Shifeng had been paying attention to Absolute Heaven. He did not even take a look at the gold coin in midair. The moment the gold coin started to descend, just as Absolute Heaven was about to use Blind, Shifeng instantly vanished. Immediately he appeared at Absolute Heaven's back, sending a chop towards the assassin. The speed of this attack was astonishing, and Absolute Heaven had no way to dodge. Absolute Heaven suddenly felt an icy feeling coming from behind him. Moreover, the blind that Absolute Heaven had used before had lost its target, becoming ineffective. Without giving it a second thought, Absolute Heaven immediately proceeded with the next part of his plan and activated Wind Steps. When activating this skill, he would become invincible for nearly 1 second. Absolute Heaven took advantage of this short moment of invincibility to block Shifeng's attack, negating all damage. Moreover, Absolute Heaven also took advantage of the impact of Shifeng's attack to send himself flying almost 6 yards away, creating a relatively large gap between Shifeng and himself. Shifeng inwardly praised his opponent as he watched Absolute Heaven's fleeing figure. If Absolute Heaven had not chosen to use Wind Steps and used Block instead, Shifeng's sword would have destroyed at least half of his life. Now, as a result of his accurate judgment, not only had Absolute Heaven managed to use Wind Steps to defend the attack, but he also managed to place quite some distance between them. Moreover, due to the 40% movement speed buff provided by Silent Steps, Absolute Heaven managed to widen the gap even further. Seeing this, Feng used Wind Blade and chased after Absolute Heaven. In the blink of an eye, the distance between the two shortened greatly. Feng's agility was very high. Throughout Starmoon Kingdom, nobody that could surpass him in terms of agility. There were also his equipment's passive skills. Nobody could match Feng in terms of speed. At this place, only the level 50 Tier 1 assassin and ranger NPCs had a chance at beating him. Absolute Heaven could not help his shocked. Immediately he retrieved a magic scroll from his bag. This magic scroll was aqua-colored, and it looked very exquisite. It turned out that it was actually a Tier 1 magic scroll. Absolute Heaven then unrolled the magic scroll and used it on Feng. Water binding. Immediately, several jets of water shot out from the magic scroll. The water flew towards Feng, intending to wrap around him. Feng revealed a calm smile, not faltering at the slightest as he continued charging at Absolute Heaven. The moment the blue jets of water came into contact with Feng, they lost all effectiveness and disappeared. It didn't work? A stunned expression appeared on Absolute Heaven's face. That was one of the precious Tier 1 magic scrolls that he possessed. The magic scroll could even entrap a boss monster for a short moment. Yet, it was actually ineffective against Feng. Absolute Heaven did not know that before the battle had begun, Feng had already activated the Aura of Space of the Seven Luminaries Crystal. The Aura of Space granted Feng immunity to all control effects. Based on the strength of a Tier 1 magic scroll, it was still too weak to break through the effect of the Seven Luminaries ring. Damn, it seems that I have no choice but to use this thing. Absolute Heaven unwillingly took out a shabby-looking magic scroll from his bag. This was an item that he had obtained by coincidence from an underground ruin. Although the magic scroll looked shabby, the magic power it gave off was frightening. Even an NPC appraiser could not identify what tier the magic scroll was. However, that appraiser estimated that the magic scroll should be Tier 2 or higher. Originally, Absolute Heaven had not intended to use this scroll. After all, he only had one. However, if he did not use it now with his opponent's frightening speed, Feng would definitely catch up to him in no time. If that happened, he would be in big trouble. Chapter 326, Recklessly Wasting Resources. While Feng and Absolute Heaven were occupied with their bet, a bloody storm swept through Creek Town. Originally, over 1,000 red names had resided in Creek Town. However, after being slaughtered by the 40 NPC guards and Zero Wing's 100-man team, less than 200 red names remained. No longer did these red names possess the arrogance they had before. Instead, they all ran and scattered in all directions. Before the start of Zero Wing's crusade, these red names had always been the ones killing and plundering the equipment of other players. Not only could they earn a fortune by doing so, but they could also enjoy watching the frightened and unwilling expressions of the players they killed. Those times were simply blissful, and their continued success only encouraged them to travel further down the path of being a red name. Now, however, these red names had finally learned what it felt like to be on the other side of the blade and what it felt like to be a powerless weakling. Although many among these red names were experts and elite players, in the end, their techniques were simply insufficient to make up for the huge difference in strength between both sides. After all, no matter how fierce an ant was, it would never be a match against a mighty lion. Since Zero Wing doesn't plan to let us live, we should fight to the bitter end. A Cursemancer appealed to the other red names when he realized that they could no longer escape. Some of the red names considered the Cursemancer's suggestion rational, and many of them decided to cooperate with each other to retaliate against Zero Wing. However, just as they turned around, one of the Tier 1 Elementalist guards launched a flame explosion, instantly killing the Cursemancer who had attempted to rally his allies. Following closely, one Tier 1 Berserker guard used Flame Charge and arrived before 4 red names. The Berserker then used Whirlwind Slash, killing all 4 in a single attack. After the players died, a pile of equipment littered the ground around the 4 players' lifeless bodies. Seeing this, the red names who had originally thought of staying behind immediately changed their minds. Without hesitation, they all turned and fled towards the Blood Hand Association's NPCs who Zero Wing had previously lured away. Although they had the option of retreating from the town, desert surrounded Creek Town. They would simply become easy targets without any cover. Only by reuniting with the Blood Hand Association's NPCs would they have a chance for survival. If they died right now, they would lose several days' worth of effort. Even if they had already familiarized themselves with the combat style of God's domain, they would still need around 4 days to recover the lost levels. Not to mention they would also lose a majority of the equipment they owned. These consequences frightened them greatly. Hence, these red names ran desperately towards the Bloodhand Association's NPCs. Unfortunately, the Tier 1 NPC guard Shifeng had hired had very high movement speeds. Aside from assassins, none of the other red names could outrun these Tier 1 NPCs. Moreover, faced with these level 50 NPCs, the stealth of these level 20 assassins was completely useless. They only had a higher chance of escaping due to their high movement speeds. Big Sis Aqua, we have really hit it big this time. The items these red names have dropped are all bronze rank and above, with a majority being mysterious iron rank. If we sell all of these weapons and equipment for credits, we can buy a large house at the city center. Snow Goose exclaimed as she picked up the items dropped by the red names alongside the NPC guards. You little money grubber. If we sell these items for credits, we'll only suffer a loss. God's domain has only recently begun, so both equipment and coins are currently scarce. The various large guilds also face a shortage of equipment. Zero Wing is only getting by because our current member count is low. By the time the construction of the guild residence is complete, and we start recruiting members again, the stockpile of items we have in the guild warehouse would run out in the blink of an eye. Now that we have obtained so much equipment, it just so happens that we can use it to meet our urgent needs. Aqua Rose chuckled as she flicked a finger on Snow Goose's forehead. At this moment, a change occurred on one of the high slopes outside of Creek Town. A crimson pillar of light shot into the sky, attracting everyone's attention. Not only was the pillar of light extremely eye-catching, but everyone could also feel a great threat coming from it. The source of this pillar was none other than Absolute Heaven's shabby-looking magic scroll. This is not good. This is the Tier 3 magic scroll, Phantom Beast's Descent. Shifeng recognized the magic scroll instantly. The might of a Tier 3 magic scroll could not be underestimated. Even when Shifeng was at his prime, he would still have suffered greatly if struck by the skill contained within a Tier 3 magic scroll, let alone the current him who was not even a Tier 1 class. Fortunately, the skill contained within Phantom Beast's Descent magic scroll was not a pure attack-type skill. Instead, it was a summoning skill. The Phantom Beast's Descent was capable of summoning a powerful Phantom Beast to fight alongside its summoner. Suddenly, a black magic array in the shape of a 7-pointed star appeared in the sky. Just as Shifeng was about to kill Absolute Heaven, the magic array fired a black ray of light towards Shifeng. Shifeng dared not be careless. Immediately he activated Defensive Blade. Boom, boom, boom. After 3 consecutive bombardments, a large crater occupied the originally flat slope. If Shifeng had not activated Defensive Blade, becoming immune to 9 ranged attacks or 4 melee attacks, he might have died. In the center of the crater, a giant tiger sat quietly beside Absolute Heaven. This tiger's body resembled a galaxy of stars. The tiger focused its silver eyes on Shifeng as it gnashed its teeth. It released an aura that was even more powerful than a lord-ranked monster. Guild leader Black Flame, the agreement we had before said that, as long as I can escape from you, you promise to do one thing for me. I wonder, is that agreement still valid if I kill you? Absolute Heaven laughed. Naturally. However, you sure are willing to part with such a rarity. Do you even know the value of a Tier 3 magic scroll? Shifeng glanced at the Phantom Beast the assassin had summoned, inwardly pitying the loss of such a precious item. Tier 0 players could not display the true might of a Tier 3 magic scroll. This was especially true for a summoning scroll. If a Tier 1 player used such a scroll, the summoned Phantom Beast could easily decide the outcome of a war involving tens of thousands of players. If used by a Tier 2 player, the Phantom Beast would have no problems eradicating a large-scale town. In Shifeng's previous life, many guilds had willingly spent thousands of gold coins to purchase such a magic scroll. At this moment, however, Absolute Heaven had used such a precious magic scroll on this small battle. This was simply a reckless waste. Of course I know. However, you are too fast. I know that I won't reach Creek Town if this continues. Compared to dying, I'd rather use it. Absolute Heaven had mourned the use of the scroll as well. However, he no longer wished to experience the humiliation of dying once again. Since I've already used this magic scroll, you can rest in peace now, Guild Leader Black Flame. Go. Get rid of him. Absolute Heaven commanded the Phantom Beast as he pointed at Shifeng. Nebula Tiger, High Lord rank. Level 30. HP 1, 800, 000/1, 800, 000. The strength of a phantom beast summoned from a summoning scroll was determined by the summoner's level and tier. Absolute Heaven was currently level 20, so the summoned beast would be level 30, which was 10 levels higher than himself. If Absolute Heaven were a tier 1 class, then the Nebula Tiger would not be just a High Lord. At the very least, it would be a Great Lord ranked monster. A Great Lord ranked monster could only be described using the word horrifying. Hundreds of players of the same level would be no more than ants in front of a Great Lord. When such a monster was under the control of a player, it would become even more frightening and powerful. This was also why Tier 3 summoning scrolls were so precious. A controllable Great Lord ranked monster could easily decide the outcome of a war involving tens of thousands of players. Chapter 327. Moment of Brilliance. Aoo. The Nebula Tiger roared angrily, releasing shockwaves with the sound. The Nebula Tiger's roar echoed throughout Creek Town, causing everyone who heard it to shudder. This was the might of a High Lord-ranked phantom beast. A single roar could send tremors through a person's heart. However, the main reason the Nebula Tiger released this roar was not to shock its enemies. Instead, it was meant for its master. In the next moment, a layer of crimson mist surrounded Absolute Heaven's body. This was the effect of Life Ward, a special skill gained by summoned monsters. When this skill activated, it would form a protective shield around the summoner, increasing the summoner's defense. When all was said and done, a summoned monster was still a summoned monster. If the summoner of the monster died, the monster would also disappear. Hence, all summoned monsters would possess skills capable of protecting their masters. When Absolute Heaven saw the effects of Life Ward, his lips immediately curled into a smile. When used, Life Ward created a protective shield capable of absorbing 20,000 damage. Even if an enemy managed to close the distance and engage him in melee combat, they would need to expend a significant amount of effort to exhaust the Life Ward. Furthermore, Absolute Heaven possessed high combat power as well. His opponent might die before he could overcome the Life Ward. Absolute Heaven had originally worried that Feng could simply deal with him directly. However, with the Life Ward protecting him, his only fear vanished. Black Flame, your time of death has come. Absolute Heaven started commanding the Nebula Tiger to attack Feng. The greatest difference between a summoned monster and a normal monster was the player's control. While under a player's control, monsters that had originally possessed powerful attributes would become even more formidable. Not to mention, as a High Lord ranked monster, the Nebula Tiger possessed quite a number of skills. It would only take an instant for the Nebula Tiger to kill a player. The Nebula Tiger, which was over 3 meters in height, lightly tapped its feet on the ground, crossing the distance of over 10 yards between Feng and itself in an instant. So fast. Feng was surprised. The Nebula Tiger swiped its claws at Feng. Although Feng wanted to dodge the attack, his reaction was a step behind, and the attack landed on its target. However, the Nebula Tiger's attack did not manage to deal any damage due to defensive blade. Seeing that its first attack had failed, the Nebula Tiger immediately brandished its claws at Feng again. After swiping its claws at Feng several times, the defensive blade's effect quickly broke. Just as the Nebula Tiger's fatal swipe was about to reach Feng barely managed to activate parry to defend himself. A level 30 High Lord ranked monster was simply too powerful. Feng did not even possess a tier 1 class yet, so it was impossible for him to stop the attack. Like a cannonball, the tiger's attack launched Feng backward. As expected of a great expert like Guild Leader Black Flame, you've even managed to block such an attack. Absolute Heaven could not help but applaud as he watched the exchange between Feng and the Nebula Tiger. Absolute Heaven was not making fun of Feng at all. Rather, he praised his enemy sincerely. Absolute Heaven himself was certain that, if he were the one receiving the Nebula Tiger's attacks right now, he would have no way of defending himself. Most likely, before he could even use block, the tiger would have killed him already. Yet Feng held it off. However, Feng also paid a heavy price when he blocked the attack. As Feng landed, he was both physically and mentally unstable. He could no longer dodge or defend against another one of the Nebula Tiger's attacks. The huge gap in attributes was not something that could be made up for by solely relying on battle techniques. Previously, Feng had used overwhelming destructive force to suppress Absolute Heaven. Now Feng faced a similar crisis. It was already praiseworthy that he managed to survive for so long. Just as the Nebula Tiger pounced at Shifeng once more, a figure suddenly dashed over and stood before Shifeng, blocking the Nebula Tiger's attack and saving Shifeng's life. Absolute Heaven was greatly stunned by this scene. The figure's speed was simply too fast, and before he could catch a clear glimpse, the figure appeared in front of Shifeng. More importantly, this figure blocked a full-powered attack from the Nebula Tiger. It was simply unbelievable. At this moment, Shifeng looked at the tall figure standing proudly before him. Smiling, he muttered, "Just in time." The person that blocked the Nebula Tiger was none other than Kite, Shifeng's personal guard. Kite was a dark gold-ranked personal guard. Moreover, he was even a Tier 1 swordsman who had reached level 30. Naturally, no player could compare to his strength. Originally, Shifeng had not planned to use Kite so soon. However, now that Absolute Heaven had summoned a High Lord-ranked monster, he would meet his own death if he did not deploy Kite. So, it's just an NPC guard. And here I wondered who was so powerful to block the Nebula Tiger's attack. However, do you really believe a level 30 Tier 1 swordsman can defeat my High Lord-ranked Nebula Tiger? Absolute Heaven asked disdainfully. Of course, since he used a summon monster, he would not criticize Shifeng's decision to use an NPC guard. Even so, he was still confident that his Nebula Tiger was stronger than Shifeng's personal guard. Although both were level 30, the Nebula Tiger was far more powerful than a Tier 1 NPC. In his eyes, Shifeng had done nothing more than delay the inevitable. I admit that Kite is not a match for the Nebula Tiger, but he can hold it back for some time. Now let's find out which will happen first, your death or Kite's. Shifeng revealed a faint smile. He then charged towards Absolute Heaven. When all was said and done, Kite was still a Tier 1 NPC. Although he could not defeat the High Lord-ranked Nebula Tiger, he would have no problems delaying the monster for some time. Otherwise, he would not deserve the rank of Dark Gold. Although the Nebula Tiger tried to chase after Shifeng, Kite once more stopped the monster in its path, annoying the beast greatly. In just a moment, Shifeng swiftly arrived before Absolute Heaven. Absolute Heaven knew that with Kite present, the Nebula Tiger could not do anything to Shifeng. Hence he commanded, "Get rid of that guard first." Absolute Heaven still possessed the life ward that would absorb 20,000 damage. He did not believe that Shifeng could kill him so easily. Moreover, he did not intend to confront Shifeng directly. After giving his command, Absolute Heaven immediately turned and ran, not giving Shifeng any chance to attack. Absolute Heaven knew that even if the Nebula Tiger failed to kill Shifeng, as long as he could escape and hide inside the town, Shifeng would lose the bet. After the Nebula Tiger switched its targets, Kite's HP started to decrease madly. After all, the Nebula Tiger was a High Lord-ranked monster. Both its attack power and movement speed were terrifying, and even Kite would sometimes fail to block the beast's attack. Whenever he was struck, he would lose close to 3,000 HP. Meanwhile, Kite only had slightly more than 18,000 HP. However, Kite was not an ordinary guard. With a single cross slash, he managed to deal close to minus 10,000 damage. He then followed up with Frozen Slash, Windwalk, and other skills that either reduced the Nebula Tiger's movement speed or increased his own movement speed, making it harder for the Nebula Tiger to hit him. When the Tiger used Heaven-Splitting Claw, Kite used Triple Spin Attack, a Tier 1 swordsman skill. When used, the skill made the user invincible for 1.5 seconds while attacking the enemy 3 times. Moreover, 60% of the damage dealt would even be used to recover the user's HP. Unfortunately, Triple Spin Attack had a long cooldown of 1 minute. Kite landed one slash after another on the Nebula Tiger, and every hit dealt over minus 2,000 damage. In the blink of an eye, Kite had recovered all the HP he had lost. Absolute Heaven was baffled by this scene. He had not expected Kite to be so powerful that he could actually contend with the Nebula Tiger. If the Nebula Tiger had not possessed a frightening 1,800,000 HP, Absolute Heaven suspected that Kite might actually succeed in killing the monster. Absolute Heaven came to the conclusion that the Nebula Tiger could not finish off Kite in a short amount of time. Hence, the only way out for him right now was to escape into Creek Town. However, Shifeng no longer gave Absolute Heaven any chances. When only a few yards stood between him and Absolute Heaven, he used Abyssal Bind on the assassin. Knowing that the situation had turned out of his favor, Absolute Heaven used Vanish without hesitation, causing Abyssal Bind to lose its target. Moreover, Vanish allowed him to enter a state of forced stealth for 3 seconds. During this period, even if Absolute Heaven received any damage, he would only break stealth temporarily before automatically re-entering stealth once again. Shi Feng simply revealed a smile at his opponent's actions. Shi Feng then used Earth Splitter. A sword aura immediately rushed towards the location where Absolute Heaven had stood, the attack revealing Absolute Heaven momentarily before he disappeared again. Although it was only an instant, Shi Feng had enough time to lock onto Absolute Heaven's position. Shi Feng then used space movement, appearing directly above the assassin. Thunder Flame Explosion. Lighting and fire descended from the skies, landing directly on Absolute Heaven's head. Absolute Heaven responded quickly to the incoming attack and threw himself forward. Simultaneously, Absolute Heaven used Shadow Cloak to negate the damage from Thunder Flame Explosion and resist the feint effect. Shi Feng was slightly astonished when he saw the skill Absolute Heaven used. He never expected for Absolute Heaven to have learned even Shadow Cloak. It was no wonder why Absolute Heaven was so confident of escaping. Shadow Cloak allowed the user to become immune to all magic damage and control effects for 5 seconds. It was the perfect skill for escaping. However, Shi Feng immediately switched the aura of space to the aura of fire, increasing his damage by 30% and decreasing his target's defense by 30%. He then cast Firestorm at the location where Absolute Heaven had disappeared from again. Firestorm inflicts 500% damage within a range of 10 by 10 yards for 5 seconds. Although Firestorm would not deal any damage to Absolute Heaven, it could still expose Absolute Heaven. Sure enough, Absolute Heaven's figure appeared once again after the attack landed. Moreover, while Absolute Heaven remained within the effective range of Firestorm, it was impossible for him to re-enter stealth. Shi Feng advanced and charged at Absolute Heaven. Simultaneously, he had activated Purgatory Power, greatly increasing his attack speed and damage. He then used Flame Burst at the escaping Absolute Heaven. Covered in flames, the abyssal blade in Shi Feng's hand was like a miniature sun. Shi Feng brandished his sword 6 times at Absolute Heaven, striking the protective shield repeatedly. Every strike dealt over -4,000 damage. His critical hits dealt close to -9,000 damage. Even though the life ward protecting Absolute Heaven could absorb up to 20,000 damage, in the face of Flame Burst, Shi Feng sliced the protective shield apart like paper. His subsequent attack after breaking the shield struck Absolute Heaven's back. The secret silver equipment Absolute Heaven wore also lost more than half of its durability from the attack. To Absolute Heaven's disbelief, his HP, which had been over 2,000, plummeted to 0. The assassin's body fell to the ground, his weapons and equipment scattered around his body. Although everything seemed to have happened slowly, in reality, it only lasted an instant. The battle stunned the Zero Wing members who watched from a distance. At this moment, no words could describe their feelings. It turned out that a battle between players in God's domain could also be so frightening. It was a battle that shook them to their core. From the appearance of the red pillar of light to the end of the battle, less than 20 seconds had passed. First, there was the confrontation between the High Lord-ranked monster and the Tier 1 NPC swordsman, and then, there was the chasing battle. The spectating members of Zero Wing had only managed to catch the afterimages of 2 figures running towards town, with one escaping while the other pursued. As the battle continued, the appearance of lightning and fire dazzled the eyes. Finally, after the momentary appearance of a miniature sun, one person lay flat on the ground with items strewn around his lifeless body. On the other side, the battle between the Nebula Tiger and Kite also came to an end. Now that its master was dead, the Nebula Tiger transformed into light particles and disappeared. Only Kite remained, standing there quietly and covered in numerous wounds. Meanwhile, the land surrounding Kite was in a miserable state. Pits and cracks surrounded him. One could just imagine how fierce the battle had been. Chapter 328, Harvest After the Battle. After the battle with Absolute Heaven came to an end, Shi Feng sighed in relief. If not for the 7 Luminaries ring, he might really have let the cunning Absolute Heaven get away. This was how God's domain worked. When players attempted to gain some achievements and make a name for themselves, they were like a boat traveling against the current. Either they advanced forward or were forced backward. Today's glory might very well become tomorrow's laughingstock. Although Absolute Heaven's growth was impressive, there was still a considerable gap between him and Shi Feng. Soon after, Shi Feng looted the items the assassin had dropped. Shi Feng was inwardly astonished when he examined Absolute Heaven's items. The equipment Absolute Heaven dropped was top tier even among secret silver equipment. Meanwhile, the daggers he dropped were fine gold rank. With these items, even among the core members of Zero Wing, Absolute Heaven could still reach the middle ranks. Among the assassins, only Fire Dance and Flying Shadow surpassed Absolute Heaven. Absolute Heaven was a lone wolf. Yet, even without relying on the support of a guild or an organization, he still obtained such quality items for himself. He was already an expert standing at the peak of White River City. If Absolute Heaven were not a solo player, the equipment he had possessed might not have been secret silver, but fine gold rank. If Absolute Heaven had been fully geared with fine gold equipment today, Shi Feng's victory would not have been so easily secured. Big Sis Aqua, is that really our guild leader? Snow Goose asked hesitantly, her big round eyes focused on the figure standing proudly within the sea of fire. He looks so much more powerful than when he appeared in the video. Guild leader is usually a very ordinary, approachable and gentle person. But now, even when looking at him from such a distance, I still feel overwhelmed. Naturally. Aqua Rose giggled. This is our guild leader, ordinary yet reliable. Snow Goose had been raiding dungeons all this time, so she had only ever heard and not personally seen any of Shi Feng's battles. Now that she had personally witnessed Shi Feng fight for the first time, it was only natural that shock filled her heart. After all, a video could only portray so much. Only by personally experiencing something could one truly understand it. Alright, stop daydreaming. Clean up these remaining red players quickly. Over 2,000 NPCs are still chasing Fire Dance and the others, and they could obliterate our team at any moment. The red names of Creek Town had despaired when faced with Shi Feng and his NPC entourage. Now that Shi Feng had also extinguished the hope presented by Absolute Heaven and the High Lord ranked monster, these red names completely lost their heart to resist. Escape. How were they supposed to escape? With Shi Feng's gale-like speed, even if they grew a few more legs, it still would not be enough for them to get away. After these red names lost their fighting spirit, Aqua Rose and the others took little effort to clean up. They took less than a minute to deal with the remaining red names of Creek Town. Meanwhile, the harvest they obtained was sufficient to arm a team of 1,000 players. Throughout this battle, although a few of their members had died and lost a level, when compared to the harvest they obtained, such loss was practically negligible. The items they obtained had easily made up for the total losses Zero Wing had suffered with surplus. Aqua Rose was overjoyed when she examined their harvest. As the manager of Zero Wing's daily affairs, she was very clear about what these items represented. With the addition of this batch of items after Zero Wing finished recruiting new members, they could arm a large batch of elite players, pushing Zero Wing's combat power to a whole other level. At that time, even if Dark Star declared another war on Zero Wing, they could still deal with it without needing Ouroboros' assistance. Guild leader, we've dealt with all the red names. We can start cooperating with Fire Dance and the others to kill the Blood Hand Association NPCs now, Aqua Rose happily reported through the team chat. Okay. Follow the plan and kill those Blood Hand Association NPCs. Be careful not to lure too many at once. Those NPCs are more sensitive than field monsters, Shi Feng said. All right. Send me a healer. I need someone revived. I'm a cleric. I'll go. Snow Goose hurriedly shouted in the team chat, excitedly waving her hand. Seeing the girl's reaction, Aqua Rose indulgently said, Fine, off you go then. In any case, the Tier 1 guards will be responsible for killing those NPCs. Our role is to supply support. The Blood Hand Association NPCs were all level 30 and above, while the members of Zero Wing were only around level 20. Among those present, only Shi Feng and Blackie possessed 10 ignore levels. Everyone else could only deal minute amounts of damage to these NPCs. The most they could do was use some control skills on these Blood Hand Association NPCs. Although these Blood Hand Association NPCs possessed a certain degree of intelligence, it was only slightly higher than normal field monsters. Otherwise, Fire Dance's group could not have lured them away. What Aqua Rose's group needed to do was to lure the Blood Hand Association NPCs away in small batches and kill them separately. With the strength of 40 level 50 Tier 1 guards, they could easily take care of up to 300 level 30 Blood Hand Association NPCs each time. With a massive difference of 20 levels, the attacks of the Blood Hand Association NPCs would only deal damage in the double digits to a Tier 1 Shield Warrior Guard. Meanwhile, a level 50 Tier 1 Shield Warrior possessed over 200,000 HP. Even if dozens of Blood Hand Association NPCs attacked simultaneously, the total damage would only be a tickle to a level 50 Tier 1 Shield Warrior. The Shield Warrior's battle recovery alone could restore most of the HP lost. Not to mention there were still the Tier 1 healers waiting in the wings. However, NPCs were different from monsters. The NPCs of the Blood Hand Association were very organized when they fought. The warriors that served as meat shields would stand in front, and the mages would attack from behind, coordinating their attacks with the melee fighters. The healers standing at the rear would also spam heals on the tanks. There was even one time where an assassin from the Blood Hand Association had circled and ambushed Aqua Rosa's group. If Cola had not reacted quickly and immediately aggroed the NPC assassin, the team would have lost at least one member to the NPC. Compared to everyone else who the NPCs suppressed, Blackie was free and unfettered as he sent spell after spell at the Blood Hand Association. The Mavis's guard Blackie wielded allowed him to ignore the massive level difference completely, and each one of Blackie's attacks could deal around -700 to -800 damage to these level 30 elite NPCs. When Blackie used Stars of Light, the result was simply earth-shaking. A damage of over -1000 appeared above every enemy NPC caught within the skill's range. Moreover, with each successive bombardment, the damage of the Stars of Light increased by 10%. The skill had a duration of 15 seconds, and by the time the 15th bombardment landed, the enemy NPCs were already receiving over -6000 damage each. Some of the attacks even achieved critical hits, dealing over -10,000 damage to the enemy NPCs. These level 30 elite NPCs only had 100,000 HP. They stood no chance against Blackie's Stars of Light. After Stars of Light ended, over 200 level 30 elite NPCs fell to the ground lifelessly. Suddenly, everyone's experience bars started increasing madly. Some even leveled from level 19 to level 20. Even Blackie, who was currently level 23, saw a huge increase in his experience bar. Even though the EXP was shared with over 100 players, each person still obtained a frightening amount. Originally, everyone had only come here to kill these NPCs for the purpose of completing the Crusade quest. Now that they had discovered the wealth of EXP in front of them, everyone started working even more enthusiastically. After killing several waves of NPCs, everyone managed to level up to level 20 or above. Blackie even reached level 24. Everyone's leveling speed was simply frightening. Haha. Sister Aqua, at the rate we're leveling, Zero Wing will fully occupy the top 100 spots on the White River City ranking list. Blackie laughed. That's a nice idea. All this time, that leveling madman Lone Tyrant had held the 9th position on the ranking list. Although Guild Leader had killed him once back in the Silverleaf Forest, he had only fallen to 10th place. Seeing that Darkstar is so adamant in challenging us, if we kick Lone Tyrant out of the top 100 of the ranking list, it would be a massive blow to both Lone Tyrant's and Darkstar's reputation. Moreover, we would also elevate Zero Wing's fame and prestige, killing two birds with one stone. Aqua Rose revealed a playful smile when she considered this interesting idea. Okay. Let's kick Lone Tyrant out of the ranking list. Chapter 329, You Don't Have a Choice. Shurfeng could not stop his smile when he heard Aqua Rose's words. In actuality, it would be a simple task for Shurfeng to let Zero Wing fully occupy the top 100 spots on the White River City ranking list. The only reason he had not done so yet was that he was afraid of attracting too much attention and the public's enmity. After all, Zero Wing was currently only a small guild. If a small guild like theirs overstepped their bounds, every guild in White River City would most likely team up and retaliate against them. However, Zero Wing was no longer a weak guild. Even if Zero Wing pulled such a huge stunt, it would only shock the other guilds. They would not feel insulted or humiliated. Hence, Shurfeng made no attempt to stop his guild members' actions. The ranking list was the only glory for Lone Tyrant. Even if he had to exceed the level 20 limit for the first clear of the 3 great dungeons, he still had to maintain his position within the top 10 of the ranking list. Lone Tyrant's obsession with the ranking list was apparent. Gentle Snow, on the other hand, was different. To secure the first clear of the 3 great dungeons, Gentle Snow had frozen her experience bar at 99% of level 20. She paid absolutely no attention to the ranking list at all. After all, her title of Snow Goddess had originated not from her high level, but her strength instead. However, Lone Tyrant was not like Gentle Snow. He had relied solely on the ranking list to gain the fame he currently possessed. It was why he worked desperately hard to maintain his spot within the top 10 of the ranking list. Although Shifeng had killed Lone Tyrant once already, robbing him of a level, he had managed to recover the lost EXP quickly. After all, he had large groups of players to help him level up. Currently, he had once again reached level 21, though he still required large amounts of EXP to reach level 22. While Aqua Rose and the others swiftly leveled from killing the NPCs of the Blood Hand Association, the cleric Snow Goose resurrected Absolute Heaven. At this moment, Absolute Heaven was overcome with disappointment. Not only had he lost most of the items he had on him, but he had also fallen to level 16. He no longer possessed the high spirits he had before. "I've won this bet of ours. Do you have anything to say?" Shifeng asked lightly as he looked at the crestfallen Absolute Heaven. Absolute Heaven glared at Shifeng, clearly irritated, before turning his head away, tacitly agreeing to Shifeng's words. It seems that someone is pouting after losing. What an unmanly person, Snow Goose softly muttered contemptuously after discerning the general situation. Absolute Heaven was suddenly livid upon hearing her comment. When all was said and done, he was still a top-tier assassin. Although he was not a well-known expert, he was still a man of his word. Now that a female player ridiculed him, how could he possibly be happy? Reluctantly, Absolute Heaven muttered in a low tone, I lost. Say it then. What do you want me to do? What is up with your attitude? You've clearly lost, yet you still sound like an aggrieved woman. You're making it seem as if our guild leader is a bully, Snow Goose added. You. Absolute Heaven's complexion alternated between flushed red and pale white, his blood boiling. He very nearly vomited blood out of anger. Never in his life had he been so greatly humiliated before. However, with Shifeng standing beside her, Absolute Heaven simply could not do anything to this infuriating girl. Before he died, he had not been a match for Shifeng. Now that he had fallen to level 16 and lost most of his items, it was impossible for him to escape Shifeng's grasp. At this moment Shifeng spoke, "All right, Snow Goose. Absolute Heaven is a top-tier expert assassin. If you continue speaking of him this way, his little heart might not handle it. No matter what, you should at least show him some respect." "Oh." Snow Goose smiled and nodded. Absolute Heaven nearly fainted from anger. Seeing Absolute Heaven's ashen complexion, Shifeng smiled faintly and said, "Since you've acknowledged your loss, I'll make it simple. I don't need you to do anything difficult. Just help me collect all the information relating to Underworld in God's domain." "You're insane." "That's Underworld you're talking about. If they find out that I leaked important information, they will hunt me down." Absolute Heaven never thought that Shifeng would actually aim for such a thing. "Oh, I didn't think you would really have such information." The assassin's reaction surprised Shifeng. His demand had only been casual. After all, Absolute Heaven was only an outer member of Underworld. How could he possibly possess all the important information relating to the organization? Logically, only those belonging to Underworld's middle management or above should possess the information he was looking for. Absolute Heaven was momentarily stunned. Immediately after, he bellowed, "Black Flame, you deceived me." Absolute Heaven had always thought of joining Underworld's core upper management. Hence, he had collected plenty of information regarding Underworld so that he would have an easier time climbing the ranks of the organization. After becoming an outer member, he had met with Feng Xianyang through South Wolf's introduction. Feng Xianyang even gave him one of the reserved spots for becoming an Underworld guard after learning of his skill. With his new status as an Underworld guard reservist, Absolute Heaven managed to obtain even more information about Underworld in God's domain. Yet Shifeng had played him so easily. "Since you have the information, hand it over to me." Shifeng was extremely interested in discovering Underworld's situation in God's domain. After all, he had provoked Feng Xianyang. Who knew what Underworld would try in the future? Without knowing anything about his enemy, Shifeng could not take appropriate measures. However, if he possessed inside information about the organization, the situation would be greatly different. One who knows his own strength and that of the enemy is invincible in battle. If Shifeng had not possessed his advantage of being a reincarnated person, Dark Star, the guild controlled by Underworld, would have long since eliminated both him and his guild. Hence, Shifeng had to take preventive measures against Underworld. Only Shifeng had not expected this boon to arrive so quickly. Originally, Shifeng had only intended to toy with Absolute Heaven for a little bit before changing his condition. His actual goal was to have Absolute Heaven report Underworld's movements within the White River City region. Now, however, things had become far simpler. He could obtain all information regarding Underworld in God's domain directly. No. I absolutely will not agree to this. Underworld far surpasses your imagination. You have no idea what you are going up against. I urge you to change your request. This is not just about me. You too would be better off without knowing anything. Why create trouble for yourself? Absolute Heaven said resolutely. It turns out that even a top-tier expert will renege on his word. It seems that I have misjudged you, Shifeng sighed. Guild leader, I could tell that he was a scoundrel that would break his promises with a single glance. What's the point of wasting your time arguing with him? Let's just do away with him. Kill him every time he revives. After we kill him to level 0, let's see how he can survive in Underworld, Snow Goose suggested, sporting a cheeky grin. You. Snow Goose's suggestion left the assassin utterly speechless. Kill him every time he revived? Was this girl really a cleric? Could she be a demon disguised as a human instead? Snow Goose, how could you speak like that? As a girl, you should act gently and reserved. Kill him every time he revives? That's simply too cruel. What will you do if you terrify him? Shifeng could not help but reprimand the cheeky little girl. At most, we'll upload the video recording the previous fight and our dialogue to the forums. It will be fine as long as we reveal this to everyone. You're right, guild leader. Snow Goose applauded cheerfully. As long as the video of the battle went viral, not only would everyone know that Absolute Heaven was a man who broke his promises, but the hidden organization named Underworld would also be exposed to the public eye. Even if Absolute Heaven did not reveal any secrets, Underworld would hunt him down for what little he had already said. Black flame. Raging flames burned in Absolute Heaven's eyes as he looked at Shifeng. He only wished that he could murder the smiling demon before him right now. Just hand it over. Shifeng calmly smiled. I have already sealed off all paths of retreat. You don't have a choice. Chapter 330 Shock. Shifeng's words left Absolute Heaven speechless. At this moment, Absolute Heaven finally understood why Shifeng would insist on making a bet with him. Shifeng was clearly capable of killing him with a single hit. Yet, Shifeng had given him hope of retaliation for this very moment. A terrible thought suddenly emerged in Absolute Heaven's mind. Had Shifeng planned to deal with Underworld all this time? Before joining Underworld, Absolute Heaven had known that Underworld's background was unfathomably deep. It was an existence that he could not afford to provoke. After joining the organization, that thought had only strengthened. He absolutely could not make an enemy of Underworld. Yet now, Shifeng dared to consider challenging Underworld. He simply did not know how to differentiate between life and death. It would have been fine if only Shifeng did not know how to differentiate between life and death. Yet Shifeng intended to drag him down as well. Moreover, the swordsman left him with no other options. Shifeng was eviler than a demon. When Absolute Heaven saw that Shifeng's finger was about to click the upload video button, he lowered his head and helplessly said, "Fine. However, I have a condition. No one can know that I gave you this information. You can rest assured on this point. Since I have asked you to do such a thing for me, I will not make things difficult for you. I won't let anyone but myself look at the information relating to Underworld," Shifeng assured and nodded. Absolute Heaven's worries were unfounded. After all, Shifeng was also worried about this situation becoming public, which would, in turn, allow Underworld to take precautionary actions. "I'll send you the files tomorrow after I have compiled them," Absolute Heaven said before turning to leave. However, Shifeng was a step ahead and blocked his retreat. "What? Worried that I'll deceive you? You currently have information to use against me. What tricks could I possibly play on you?" Absolute Heaven laughed bitterly. "You're overthinking things. I'm just returning the items you dropped when you died. As for your levels, with your strength you should recover quickly." Shifeng then took out the items he had looted from Absolute Heaven and returned them to their original owner. After some hesitation, Absolute Heaven finally decided to receive the items before leaving. "Guild leader, are we really going to start a war with that mysterious organization named Underworld?" Snow Goose asked. Based on Absolute Heaven's words, Snow Goose could discern just how terrifying Underworld was. Even a top-tier expert like Absolute Heaven was afraid when talking about it. Furthermore, a powerful guild like Dark Star was just a puppet of Underworld. With Zero Wing's current strength, wouldn't acting against Underworld be akin to smashing an egg against a rock? What? Afraid? Sure Feng chuckled. Of course not. Our Zero Wing is invincible. How could we possibly lose to Underworld? Snow Goose's eyes glowed as her fighting spirit soared. She had left Twilight Echo with Aqua Rose to create their own legacy in God's domain. How could they give up so easily because of a single Underworld? Time passed little by little. At this moment, Aqua Rose and the others were still battling against the Blood Hand Association NPCs. Even though it was night in God's domain, spells of war illuminated the sky around Creek Town so brilliantly that it appeared to be day. Although these NPCs provided no loot, the EXP they gave was bountiful. The members of Zero Wing were only able to kill these Blood Hand Association NPCs with such ease due to the assistance of the level 50 Tier 1 guards. In the future, it would not be so easy for them to come across such a valuable opportunity. As more Blood Hand Association NPCs died, the Zero Wing Guild members watched their levels soar. The ranking list of White River City also underwent dramatic changes. Players from Zero Wing continuously appeared within the top 100 of the ranking list. The change had not been obvious at the beginning, as only a few members had entered the 90s. However, as time passed, the EXP growth of Zero Wing never stopped. The guild members who originally ranked within the 90s jumped into the 80s, then jumped again from the 80s to the 70s, their positions ever rising. However, this was still not the most shocking incident. What really shocked people was the fact that the Zero Wing members occupied every rank between 70 and 100. They had forced all others out of the top 100 ranks. Is this real or fake? Aren't the members of Zero Wing too impressive? It was already amazing that they managed to occupy the top 8 positions before. Now, they fully occupy the 70th to the 100th positions. What did these people eat to become so fierce? As expected of the guild that I fancy. If this continues, Zero Wing will sooner or later occupy all 100 spots on the White River City ranking list. That shouldn't be possible, right? After all, there is still Lone Tyrant who ranks 10th. Although Black Flame had killed him once, he has already managed to recover to level 21. It shouldn't be possible to kick him out of the top 100. Lone Tyrant? So what? Hadn't he been the top player on the White River City ranking list before? In the end, 8 experts from Zero Wing still shoved him aside. Even now he is still stuck at 9th place. Now that Zero Wing is showing its might, he might not keep his rank for long. Serves him right. Who told Lone Tyrant to behave so arrogantly before? He had dared to ambush and made an enemy of Zero Wing. Now Zero Wing is merely teaching Lone Tyrant a lesson, letting him know that his pride is worth nothing to Zero Wing. They can surpass him anytime they want to. Everyone was very concerned about the sudden emergence of the Zero Wing members on the ranking list, and they all began to voice their suggestions and opinions. Many felt that this was Zero Wing's retaliation towards Dark Star. The timing of this situation was simply too coincidental, being only a few hours after Dark Star's war with Zero Wing had ended. Moreover, Zero Wing also declared that Dark Star would pay for their actions. However, nobody ever thought that Zero Wing would take action so quickly. If Zero Wing really succeeds, this will become a true legend in God's domain. Not even first-rate guilds have managed to occupy the ranking list of a city. Zero Wing rocks. Go Zero Wing. Kick Lone Tyrant out of the ranking list. Everyone in White River City highly anticipated the arrival of a legend, creating a huge commotion over this matter. The thought of a single guild monopolizing the entire ranking list had sent shivers down their spines. At that time, if they joined such a guild and wore the six-winged emblem on their chests, they would definitely become the targets of everyone's admiration. On the other hand, while the casual players in White River City were very excited over this matter, the many guilds were not happy at all. It had been an earth-shaking matter when Zero Wing had occupied the top 8 positions on the ranking list. Yet, now, Zero Wing was actually trying to occupy the top 100 positions of the ranking list. Just how were they, the other guilds, supposed to continue competing in White River City? Inside the Silverleaf Forest, leading a team of several hundred players, Lone Tyrant was desperately leveling up. Can someone tell me just what is going on? Lone Tyrant demanded, irritated. He had spared no effort to raise his own level. Yet, now, as if on steroids, the members of Zero Wing leveled at a rate many times faster than himself. Based on the Zero Wing members' current leveling speed, it was only a matter of time before they surpassed him. Unfortunately, nobody could answer Lone Tyrant's question. "You're a bunch of trash. Go investigate immediately. They must have found a good grinding spot. Once you find them, send someone to eliminate them. I will never allow these people to surpass me." Lone Tyrant commanded the guild members of Dark Star. The only reason he had managed to lead Dark Star to its current status in White River City was that of his previous occupancy of the White River City ranking list's #1 position. However, due to Blackie and the others, he was no longer the top player in the region. Even so, he still occupied the top 10 in the eyes of the public. If he fell out of the top 100, what else would he have? Aside from his identity as the guild leader of Dark Star, there was nothing special about him. Although Lone Tyrant was quite powerful, he knew that he could not compare with top-tier experts. If not for the massive support from Underworld, Dark Star would not have developed to its present state. Lone Tyrant knew that after the siege on Zero Wing had failed, Underworld started to look down on him. If he lost his only merit as well, based on how Underworld conducted business, he would not keep his position as guild leader for long. Chapter 331 Hidden Warehouse. Considering the events up to this point, Lone Tyrant grew worried. "Hurry, lure more monsters. Those bastards from Zero Wing are dreaming if they think they can surpass me and kick me out of the ranking list. I won't give this position away." Lone Tyrant commanded once more, a bloody glow flashing in his eyes. Soon after, a group of rangers and assassins left to carry out his orders and lure more monsters. The mages of Dark Star also promptly increased their attack rate, using more AoE skills than before. As for Lone Tyrant, who was not in a team with his guild members, he began methodically kill-stealing the low HP monsters, taking the majority of the monsters' EXP for himself rather than sharing with his comrades. This leveling method was extremely extravagant. Even a party of experts continuously grinding monsters could not compare to Lone Tyrant's current leveling speed. Unfortunately, Lone Tyrant did not know that the monsters he and the members of Zero Wing grinded were on entirely different levels. Lone Tyrant only grinded level 20 common monsters at the moment, so he received no bonus EXP for killing them. On the other hand, Zero Wing's 100-man team was killing level 30 elite NPCs. Originally, these elite NPCs had provided an abundance of EXP. They also gained the bonus EXP rewarded for killing a monster that was 10 levels higher. After splitting the EXP for each NPC killed across 100 players evenly, everyone leveled up far faster than Lone Tyrant. Time flew by quickly. White River City was bustling at that night. As a Saturday, even though it was already daytime in the real world, many players had not logged out and were still having fun in God's domain. However, as it was dangerous to leave the city at night, many players had chosen to visit bars in the city. With nothing better to do, players had started focusing their attention to Zero Wing's ranks. Many also began guessing on whether or not Zero Wing would kick Lone Tyrant out of the ranking list. It had been over an hour since the commotion had begun. Now, instead of occupying up to just the 70th position, Zero Wing occupied up to the 40th position of the ranking list. Bystanders fell speechless when witnessing the leveling speed of this new guild. Originally, many players had simply guessed and joked around. None of them actually thought that Zero Wing could accomplish such a feat. Watching this momentum, however, Zero Wing might really intend to monopolize the top 100 spots on the ranking list. Everyone could not help but grow excited in anticipation. If Zero Wing truly managed to achieve such a feat, then they, as players who preferred to play solo, might have a few things to consider carefully. Should they or should they not join Zero Wing? Inside one of the bars in White River City, the members of the Holy Grail Knights were currently drinking in celebration. Today they had managed to raid a level 15 20-man hard mode dungeon, the Bloodfang Fort. They also obtained quite a load of equipment and materials from the raid. Brother Warwolf, that Zero Wing sure is godly, huh? First, they defeated world dominators. After that, they managed to kill Dark Star's Lone Tyrant. Now they are even planning to kick Lone Tyrant out of the top 10 and monopolize the ranking list. Soon they might even rule White River City. In reply, Warwolf, the leader of the Holy Grail Knights, shook his head and said, "It's still too early to say. Moreover, the other top 6 guilds aren't here just for show. They won't allow Zero Wing to develop freely. Although, it is true that I have underestimated Zero Wing before. Moments after Wolf started speaking, a few cloaked players walked into the bar. The equipment these players wore immediately attracted the attention of the others inside the bar. These newcomers were fully geared with secret silver equipment. Moreover, none of them possessed a guild emblem on their chests, signifying that they were all independent players. Meanwhile, the leader of this group was a beautiful female summoner. If Shifeng were here right now, he would definitely notice that this female summoner was none other than Yulan of Underworld. Big brother Wolf, long time no see. Yulan walked up to Wolf and greeted him with a bright smile. It's been a long time indeed. The pure and sweet little girl from the past has grown into a beautiful tigress. Time really is amazing. Wolf sighed ruefully as he looked at the noble and graceful girl in front of him. Big brother Wolf, you jest. Everything I have today is all thanks to you. Yulan smiled faintly. Looking around, she said, we haven't seen each other for so many years now, and I really wish to have a nice conversation with you. There are too many bystanders here. Why don't we find a room upstairs to catch up? Indeed, it has been many years since we last met. We should really have a nice chat. Wolf immediately spent 5 silvers to rent a guest room on the 2nd floor. He then walked towards the stairs leading to the bar's 2nd floor. Yulan promptly followed after Wolf. The other cloaked players that had entered the bar with Yulan also moved to guard the staircase, preventing anyone from going upstairs. At this moment, the entire bar was silent. The other members of the Holy Grail Knights, as well as the other guests in the bar, were still stunned by what they just saw. Their minds were unable to process what had just happened. The leader of an independent team actually knew such a noble and elegant beauty. Moreover, they even rented a private room to have a conversation. The other players' minds went wild with fantasy. A short distance away from Creek Town, Aqua Rose and the other members of Zero Wing still grinded the Blood Hand Association's NPCs relentlessly, their experience bars continuously rising. There were over 2,000 NPCs in Creek Town, and it would not be an easy task to kill every one of them. Although Blackie's Stars of Light skill was very effective against the enemy NPCs, the skill had a long cooldown. As for everyone else, the damage they dealt to the enemy NPCs was practically negligible. In the end, the main source of damage was the level 50 Tier 1 guards. However, there were healers among the Blood Hand Association NPCs, as well as some powerful level 50 Blood Hand Association elites. It was not possible to eliminate all of them within a short time. Seeing that the situation had mostly stabilized, Shifeng said in the team chat, Cola and Violet, you two come with me. We're going to make a trip to the Blood Hand Association stronghold. Everyone else, remain here and continue grinding. Guild leader, you're too biased. I helped you revive that bastard from before. Why are you taking Violet but not me? Snow Goose pouted. We'll be going to the Blood Hand Association stronghold, and nothing good is waiting for us there. Why would you even want to go? Shifeng laughed bitterly. Shifeng had his own reasons for not bringing anyone else along. How could a Crusade quest possibly be so easy? Previously, Fire Dance and the others had merely lured away the NPCs guarding the town. There were still plenty of enemy NPCs waiting for them inside the Blood Hand Association stronghold. Right now they were merely going to scout ahead. Is it very dangerous? Snow Goose asked, tilting her head slightly. Of course, Shifeng said seriously with a nod. Forget it. I can't compare to Violet in terms of survivability, and it would be a pity if I lost my fine gold-ranked staff, Snow Goose said after giving it some thought. Soon after, Shifeng led Cola and Violet Cloud to the Blood Hand Association stronghold in Creek Town. As the Blood Hand Association stronghold, the security around the construct was usually very strict. However, now that all of the NPCs had been drawn away, Shifeng's group managed to enter the stronghold without any trouble. The inside of the tower was a resplendent sight. Such a luxurious building in a barren place like Creek Town was unimaginable. Careful. This is the Blood Hand Association stronghold. There are definitely a lot of traps here, Shifeng reminded his team. In the past, world dominators had suffered heavy losses to conquer Creek Town. They had dispatched over 6,000 Tier 1 players and returned with less than 1,000. Meanwhile, close to half of those deaths had been because of the hidden traps inside the Blood Hand Association stronghold. One could just imagine how deadly the traps inside the Blood Hand Association stronghold were. Although world dominators had paid a steep price, their harvest was equally shocking. It was especially true for the hidden warehouse inside the Blood Hand Association's stronghold. One of the main reasons that many large guilds preferred to capture towns ruled by dark forces was because of the treasures they possessed. Of course, different towns gave varying amounts of treasure. In this case, the Blood Hand Association possessed a significantly large treasury. Even though the loot available was limited due to Crusade quest, the final sum was still sufficient to move even Shifeng's heart. Otherwise, who would be so foolish as to spend 30 gold coins to take on a Crusade quest? Moreover, only a Viscount or someone of higher status could accept such a quest. Chapter 332, Encountering a Magic Weapon Once Again. Inside of the Blood Hand Association stronghold, it was like a maze. There were also many level 30 Blood Hand Association knights patrolling the construct. These NPCs wore red leather armor and wielded spears. They also had 200,000 HP. Moreover, these NPCs always moved in groups of 10, and their coordination made them extremely difficult to deal with. If Shifeng and the others recklessly charged into a group of these NPCs, even with a tier 1 swordsman like Kite protecting them, the result would be the same. These knights would eliminate them in an instant. In fact, even if Shifeng's group were strong enough to fight these Blood Hand Association knights, they would still meet their deaths if they chose to confront these NPCs. This was due to the many hidden traps and mechanisms throughout the stronghold. In the past, world dominators had paid a steep price because of these traps. Naturally, Shifeng would not behave as recklessly as world dominators had in the past. Hence, he would always detour and bypass any knights they met, avoiding a confrontation with the NPCs at all costs. In any case, the paths in this stronghold all connected in one way or another. As long as one was careful, it was possible to find the Blood Hand Association's hidden warehouse without engaging in combat. Finally, after a long time, Shifeng's group arrived before a pair of tightly sealed, stone doors. 2 words were etched into the wall next to the doors: Control Room. This was where all of the traps within the Blood Hand Association's stronghold were controlled. As long as they disabled these traps, they would have nothing to worry about as they traveled through the construct. Just after Kola forced open the heavy stone doors, the group immediately discovered an old, one-eyed man dressed in black robes inside the control room. The old man held a redwood staff as he manipulated a magic array. Inca Richter, Tier 1 Elementalist. Level 30. HP 1000/1000000. Thank God it is as I speculated. He's only level 30 and not a level 50 Tier 2 mage. Shifeng could not help but sigh in relief when he saw Inca Richter's information. If not for the Crusade quest, the old man before them would be near impossible to deal with. Although Inca Richter would only be level 50, as a Tier 2 mage he could kill a level 50 Tier 1 player as easily as squishing a bug. Guild Leader, it's a level 30 Tier 1 Elementalist. I'm afraid that he might be somewhat difficult to deal with. Should we call for reinforcements? Kola had a clear understanding of his own abilities. Currently he was only level 22. If it were a level 20 Tier 1 Elementalist he could tank it. However, it was impossible for him to endure the attacks of a level 30 Tier 1 Elementalist. The tier suppression alone would greatly increase the damage he received, not to mention the level suppression. With the two combined, even as the chief MT of Zero Wing, he would be cannon fodder at best. Relax, you don't need to tank. Shifeng smiled. He then looked at his personal guard, Kite, who stood beside him, saying, Kite will be our MT. Kola, you'll act as support. You just need to activate your magic resistance aura and use protection blessing on Kite during crucial moments. Kola suddenly remembered that Shifeng had a personal guard like Kite beside him. Kite had over 18,000 HP. Compared to Kola, Kite was far more durable as an MT. Although Kite was far inferior to Inca Richter regarding HP, as a level 30 Tier 1 swordsman, Kite's close combat capabilities far surpassed a Tier 1 Elementalist. Kite, you'll tank Inca Richter. Violet, you'll heal Kite. Kola, focus on using protection blessing on Kite when needed, Shifeng commanded. Without hesitation, Kite charged Inca Richter, slashing his sword at the old man. A damage of over -4,000 appeared above Inca Richter's head. Compared to the High Lord-ranked Nebula Tiger, Inca Richter's defense was much lower. Despicable intruders, I'll turn all of you into my lab rats. Inca Richter used instantaneous movement, dodging Kite's sword techniques. The old man then waved his staff, summoning an aqua-blue magic shield that covered his body. The magic shield was one of the most frequently used defensive spells that elementalists possessed, and it could protect the caster against a considerable amount of damage. Following which, Inca Richter waved his free hand, summoning an ice wall to prevent Kite from advancing. However, Kite was no ordinary guard. Immediately, Kite activated Wind Blade and jumped. Kite effortlessly leaped across the ice wall in his path and arrived before Inca Richter. He then brandished his sword at the elementalist multiple times in quick succession. After taking a few hits from Kite's sword, the magic shield surrounding Inca Richter's body shattered into particles of light, leaving the caster's feeble body vulnerable to Kite's attacks. Fortunately for the old man, the magic shield had earned him enough time to cast Frozen Circle. White, bone-chilling mist spread out from Inca Richter and assaulted Kite. In response to the spell, Kite abruptly jumped into the air and dodged the Frozen Circle. Inca Richter cursed when he saw the swordsman avoid another spell with such a simple action. In a fit of rage, Inca Richter pointed a finger at Kite, sending multiple fireballs flying at the swordsman who was still suspended in mid-air. As the fireballs approached him, Kite calmly twisted his body and brandished his sword so fast that only bright afterimages were visible. He sliced the incoming fireballs in half, one after another. The speed of Kite and Inca Richter's exchange was stunning, and any ordinary player would have difficulty following the fight. Standing at a distance, both Cola and Violet Cloud were dumbfounded by the scene before them. This was the first time they had witnessed a fight between NPCs. Never would they have expected that a fight between NPCs could actually be more exciting than a fight between experts. The longer they watched, the more felt ashamed of themselves. Inwardly, they also began to estimate how they would fare if they fought Inca Richter if they were the same level and tier. However, as they continued watching the exchange between Kite and Inca Richter, they soon reached a shocking conclusion. They were not even opponents for Inca Richter. The reason they came to such a conclusion, however, was not because of the great disparity between their HPs. Instead, it was because of the difference in combat techniques. This conclusion left them both speechless. What are you two daydreaming about? They are both high-level NPCs. Ordinary monsters cannot compare to them. It's no big deal if your current combat techniques are not a match for theirs. As long as you participate in more battles and accumulate experience, you will surpass Inca Richter sooner or later. Shifeng could not help but console the two. Naturally, he could discern their thoughts. Inca Richter was different from the Blood Hand Association elites battling outside the town. Before the Crusade quest had weakened him, Inca Richter had originally been a Tier 2 NPC. Thus, his combat proficiency was superior to those ordinary NPCs. As for Kite, not only was he a Dark Gold ranked personal guard, but he had also been a Tier 2 sword master in the past. His combat techniques were excellent. In truth, Shifeng had also been shocked when he had first witnessed a battle between high-level NPCs. It was especially true for battles involving Tier 3 NPCs or above. Regarding control over personal combat power, these NPCs could actually exhibit more than 70% of their strength. According to the evaluation criteria of God's domain, those capable of exhibiting more than 70% of their personal combat power were considered first-rate experts. These NPCs were far superior to the current top-tier experts. Moreover, even an NPC like Inca Richter was only capable of exhibiting 60% of his personal combat power. Hence, it was natural for Cola and Violet Cloud to be inferior to NPCs like Kite and Inca Richter. Following which, Violet Cloud began healing the Tier 1 swordsman while Shifeng supported Kite from the sides. From time to time, Shifeng would use control skills such as Thunder Flame Explosion and Abyssal Bind to restrain Inca Richter. Shifeng also used the 7 Luminaries Ring, swapping between Aura of Time and Aura of Fire. While Aura of Time was activated, Shifeng would cast Absolute Time. While Aura of Fire was activated, Shifeng would use Firestorm. Whenever Inca Richter was about to cast a powerful spell, Shifeng would deftly activate Absolute Time, interrupting Inca Richter's spell and forcing the old man to defend against Kite sword techniques using his staff. A mage that could not cast spells was like a tiger that without its fangs and claws. In such circumstances, Inca Richter could only endure Shifeng and everyone else's attacks helplessly. Very quickly, Inca Richter's 1 million HP fell rapidly. 90%, 70%, 30%. After more than 10 minutes, Inca Richter's body finally dropped to the floor, transforming into an abundance of EXP. Shi Feng reached level 24 with the sudden influx of EXP. Following which, Shi Feng turned off all of the traps within the Blood Hand Association's stronghold. Now that there were no more traps, it would be much easier to deal with the enemy NPCs. Suddenly, Cola excitedly ran toward Shi Feng's side and asked, "Guild leader, I found a key beside this old man's body. What do you think this is?" "A key?" Shi Feng was slightly puzzled. Logically, none of the Blood Hand Association NPCs should drop any items. Shi Feng received the purple gold key from Cola and examined it. There were complex runes carved onto the body of this key. To Shi Feng's surprise, he could not obtain any information about the key. Everything displayed as unknown. What a strange key. In Shi Feng's memory, there were no records mentioning this key. However, since Inca Richter had dropped it, it should be extraordinary. It seems that we will have to look for an appraiser after we return to White River City. When considering unknown items, Shi Feng suddenly remembered the additional skill of his golden stigmata, Omniscient Eyes. The Omniscient Eyes could obtain all information on any items. This skill was far more amazing than the appraising eyes of appraisers. Let's have a look then. Shi Feng activated Omniscient Eyes and took a look at the key in his hand once more. This time the information displayed was no longer unknown. All secrets about the key unveiled before Shi Feng's eyes. It's actually a magic weapon. Shock filled Shi Feng's heart as he investigated the purple gold key in his hand. Chapter 333 Hidden Class. Magic weapon? Cola did not quite understand Shi Feng's words. Violet Cloud was confused as well. Shifting her gaze to Shi Feng, she hoped to find out from Shi Feng what a magic weapon was. It was their first time hearing the term, magic weapon. A magic weapon isn't an orthodox weapon. You can think of it as a double-edged sword of tremendous power. It can either raise a player's combat power to frightening heights, or completely ruin them, Shi Feng explained, smiling. He had naturally noticed the two's interest. Shi Feng had never revealed the secret of the abyssal blade to others. Aside from Blackie and Lonely Snow, nobody else in the guild knew about it. Matters regarding magic weapons were of utmost importance. Compared to Blackie's epic ranked staff, magic weapons were much more precious. After all, they were weapons capable of rivaling legendary weapons. Had it been possible, Shi Feng would have wished that the abyssal blade in his hands could become an epic weapon instead of a magic weapon. Although his combat power would have decreased significantly, he would not have to worry about the abyssal blade's backlash. Although Shi Feng had never personally witnessed the result of a backlash, he had still heard rumors about it. In the past, many first-rate experts had been devoured by their own magic weapons. After suffering the backlash, these first-rate experts had no choice but to delete their accounts and start all over again. Such a heavy price frightened even Shi Feng. Currently, he had no other choice but to continuously improve himself, in both combat techniques and combat power, in order to face the future backlash. So it turns out that magic weapons are so amazing. But, guild leader, is there even a class that uses a key as a weapon? None of the 12 main classes in God's domain that I know of uses a key as a weapon, Cola asked. There is. However, it is a hidden class, Shi Feng answered. Hidden class? So there really are hidden classes in God's domain? Then aren't hidden classes very amazing? Guild leader, is it possible for us to switch to a hidden class? Cola's trust in Shi Feng had long since reached the level of blind faith. He did not have a shred of doubt about Shi Feng's words. If Shi Feng said hidden classes existed in God's domain, then to Cola, these definitely existed in God's domain. Even if there weren't any hidden classes, Cola would still believe that there were. Big brother Cola, what are you getting so anxious for? You should let guild leader finish speaking first. Violet Cloud was also very interested in regard to hidden classes. Seeing his two party members looking at him with such fervent eyes, Shi Feng could not help but laugh, saying, "This hidden class is called Astromancer and it can be considered a branch of the mage classes. Any mage or healer class can convert to an Astromancer. The minimum requirement is that you must first reach level 20. More importantly, you must also receive and complete the class change quest for the hidden class. Meanwhile, this key is very special. Not only is it a weapon, it is also a tool meant for triggering the class change quest for the hidden class. You just need to bring this key to White River City and you'll automatically receive the hidden class change quest." Guild leader, is an Astromancer strong? Can I still continue healing after I become an Astromancer? Violet Cloud was suddenly excited. As Zero Wing developed, the number of battles the guild would be involved in would increase. Although she loved being a cleric, the things she could do were clearly limited. After all, when all was said and done, a cleric was not a combat-oriented class. Violet Cloud dearly wanted to fight as well. She did not wish to always stand in the rear and receive the protection of others. Although it is called a hidden class, you're not exactly going to be changing to an entirely different class. It is more like having extra unique class skills. You will simply be gaining an additional skill set that does not belong to your original class. The downside to this is that you will take several times longer to level up, compared to normal classes. Moreover, it won't be an easy task to learn the system skills of a hidden class. Simply put, your life will become much harder after converting to a hidden class, Shifeng explained. In addition, Astromancer isn't a class suitable for the average player. The controls involved are very complicated, and the control difficulty is at least 2 to 3 times that of a normal mage class. If an ordinary player were to convert into an Astromancer, they might find themselves losing fights to opponents that they had managed to defeat in the past. On the other hand, if you successfully master the class, even if you meet someone who had become much more powerful than they were in the past, you can still beat them up until their mothers no longer recognize them. Overall, Astromancer could be considered a very extreme hidden class. Seeing Violet Cloud's passionate gaze, Shifeng asked, "Do you wish to convert to this hidden class?" I don't want to always stay at the back and heal. I want to be the same as Big Sis Fire Dance and Big Sis Aqua. I want to be able to fight enemies at the front lines as well." Violet Cloud nodded. She then looked at Shifeng and asked timidly, "Guild leader, can you please let me have this hidden class?" Violet Cloud knew that she was being selfish. After all, she did not obtain this key by herself. Moreover, countless others in the guild would be willing to fight over a hidden class. There were also powerful mage experts such as Aqua Rose, Ice Queen Su Qianlu, Blackie, and many others in the guild. If they were to change classes into an Astromancer, they could greatly increase the guild's strength. There was simply no place for a healer like her. However, she wished to contribute more to the guild. Cola's mouth widened in shock when he heard Violet Cloud speak. He had not expected the usually quiet and lovely Violet Cloud to make such a bold move. This? Shifeng wrinkled his sharp brows, entering a deep contemplation. Looking at Shifeng's grave expression, Violet Cloud could not help but start panicking. Guild leader, Violet's control and techniques are definitely first-rate. Even I am no match for her. Won't you consider giving her a chance? Cola voiced his opinion. After thinking it over for a while, Shifeng seriously looked at Violet Cloud, saying, "I'm not forbidding you to convert your class into an Astromancer. Only this key is slightly troublesome. If you use this key to convert your class into an Astromancer, your path will be fraught with an endless amount of trouble in the future. You might even ruin your account. All your efforts would go down the drain. At that time, while everyone is over level 100, you will have to start from scratch. Do you really have the courage and determination to do so?" In fact, Shifeng had no doubts in regard to Violet Cloud's control and techniques. If Shifeng did not possess 10 years' worth of experience playing God's Domain, Violet Cloud might have already surpassed him by now. Based on Violet Cloud's standards, she might immediately become one of Zero Wing's top combatants once she was an Astromancer. Shifeng would naturally feel happy over this matter. Yet, what he had in his hand right now was a magic weapon. If the weapon were a legendary weapon and not a magic weapon, he would willingly give it to Violet Cloud without hesitation as long as she wanted it. A magic weapon, on the other hand, had pros and cons that Shifeng was very clear about. As long as a player unsealed a magic weapon and became its controller, then they would inevitably have to face the backlash of the magic weapon one day. Based on the current situation, the disadvantages of giving Violet Cloud the magic weapon greatly outweighed the advantages. Most importantly, not every player could handle the pressure of having to start all over again. "Guild leader, I'm not afraid of trouble. I only hope that I can do more for the guild. Even if I end up back in square one because of this item, I will have no regrets. At the very least, I would have contributed greatly towards the guild's current development." Violet Cloud looked at Shifeng, her eyes shining with conviction. Faced with Violet Cloud's gaze, Shifeng abruptly recalled how he had been back then, and burst out in sudden laughter. "That's right. What's there to be afraid of? It's just a restart at worst." The worry that filled Shifeng's heart disappeared. He then handed the key to Violet Cloud. "This key is still sealed. After returning to White River City, Go look for someone who can unseal it. After it is unsealed, you will automatically receive the Tier 1 Hidden Class Change quest. Thank you, guild leader. I definitely won't let you down. Violet Cloud sincerely thanked Shi Feng as she excitedly received the purple gold key. Chapter 334, Occupying the Ranking List. After Violet Cloud received the key, her heart could not help but pound in anticipation. She wished that she could quickly return to the city, undo the seal on this key, and become an important combat power for Zero Wing as soon as possible. Although the guilds in White River City currently appeared to be at peace on the surface, beneath that surface were surging undercurrents. Nobody knew what kind of plans these guilds were concocting. This was especially true for Dark Star and World Dominators. No matter how one looked at it, they were not guilds that would give up after suffering only 1 or 2 defeats. Yet, despite Zero Wing maintaining such a high profile, these 2 guilds had actually done nothing at all. How could their lack of a response not give rise to suspicions? Although Violet Cloud did not know what these 2 guilds were planning, she was sure of one thing. As long as Zero Wing became sufficiently strong, no matter what sort of tricks or means those 2 guilds used, all would be rendered useless. Star's Reminiscence? Violet Cloud softly muttered after checking the information of the key in her hands. Star's Reminiscence, magic weapon. A key belonging to the ancient and great Star Sage Reigns. Inside this key remains a fragment of Star Sage Reigns' power. Currently, Reigns' power has been sealed by a mysterious power, and information about the key can only be unveiled after the seal has been undone. This seal requires a Tier 3 Great Mage to undo. After Shi Feng had used omniscient eyes on this Star's Reminiscence, a portion of the information that had displayed as unknown became available. Star Sage Reigns was one of the many legendary characters of God's domain. Even among legendary characters, Star Sage Reigns was one of the more dazzling figures. The reason being, the Astromancer class had managed to become powerful and prosperous only due to the efforts of Star Sage Reigns. Unfortunately, along with the demise of Star Sage Reigns, the entire Astromancer class had slowly vanished through time. As of today, most people had already forgotten about the existence of Astromancers. Shi Feng took a look at his surroundings, saying, "Now that the traps have been removed, we should return as well." With the magic array of the control room deactivated, what they needed to do next was to wipe out all the Bloodhand Association NPCs outside Creek Town, as well as all the NPCs inside the Bloodhand Association stronghold. After that was done, the Crusade quest would be officially completed. While Shi Feng's group of 4 was leaving the Bloodhand Association stronghold, a major incident occurred at White River City. Originally, the members of Zero Wing had occupied only up to the 40th position on the White River City ranking list. However, after another 2 hours had passed, Zero Wing now occupied every rank up to the 20th position of the ranking list. Currently, Zero Wing was only 11 ranks away from obtaining full monopoly over the ranking list. At present, not a single guild in Starmoon Kingdom had managed to achieve the feat of completely monopolizing the ranking list of a single city. To be precise, nobody had even dared to think of achieving such a feat. After all, there were plenty of experts in every city. There were bound to be a few leveling madmen. It was practically impossible for a single guild to surpass every other player in a city. Not to mention, White River City wasn't just a small city. On the contrary, it was the most important city in Starmoon Kingdom's eastern region. It was also the 5th largest city in Starmoon Kingdom. Needless to say, there were plenty of guilds and experts gathered here, making it very difficult to fully monopolize the city's ranking list. Yet now, Zero Wing was actually about to accomplish such a feat. How could the players of White River City not grow excited about it? However, the players most excited over this situation were still the members of Zero Wing. At this moment, many members of Zero Wing started cheering loudly on the streets as they tracked the ranking list, showing their fervent support for Aqua Rose and the others. Of course, while some were rejoicing over Zero Wing's inevitable monopoly over the ranking list, others grew anxious at this situation. When Lone Tyrant saw that Zero Wing members were quickly catching up to him, he started using every means available to him to level up. Lone Tyrant sent for another 600 players from Dark Star to assist him in leveling up. He then split these 600 players into 30 teams of 20 players. These teams were then tasked with gathering and killing monsters around Lone Tyrant. As long as a team was about to kill the monsters they had herded, they would immediately invite Lone Tyrant into their teams before killing said monsters. That way Lone Tyrant could still receive a portion of the EXP without needing to personally land the killing blow. After the monsters were killed, Lone Tyrant would then leave the team and go on to join other teams. Including the several hundred players that were originally helping him, Lone Tyrant now had over 30 teams of players assisting him in leveling up. Lone Tyrant continued to leave and join teams this way, accumulating large amounts of EXP for himself. Naturally, the effect on his leveling speed was self-evident. However, such an extravagant way of leveling was only possible because Lone Tyrant was the guild leader of Dark Star. Other people could only look on in envy. Not even tycoons dared to level up in such a way. In truth, Lone Tyrant himself was reluctant to waste so much manpower. However, he simply had no other choice. Despite sending out a horde of people to search for Zero Wing's whereabouts, no one returned with positive results. Lone Tyrant could not stop Zero Wing's progress even if he wanted to. No matter how hard Lone Tyrant racked his brain, he simply could not figure out how the members of Zero Wing were leveling up so quickly. Even when he was using such an extravagant way of leveling, his leveling speed was still far inferior to theirs. It would be fine if this situation was only limited to 1 or 2 individuals in Zero Wing. However, such a large group of players was actually leveling up so quickly. Just what kind of method were they using to accomplish such a feat? If Zero Wing were to really kick him out of the ranking list, then he, as the guild leader of Dark Star and also someone who was famed for his high level, would really become the laughingstock of White River City. Hence, Lone Tyrant had no choice but to carry out such an unwise move. However, with the passage of time, Lone Tyrant grew increasingly frightened. Everyone in White River City was greatly surprised as well. The reason being, not only did Zero Wing's leveling speed not slow down, it somehow was even accelerating. The rankings changed practically every few minutes. The positions Zero Wing occupied rapidly went from the 20th to the 15th, before increasing to 12th and finally stopping at 10th. Now, Lone Tyrant was the only player on the ranking list who was not part of Zero Wing. Lone Tyrant became even more frantic at this sight. Lure more monsters. The more the better. Everyone else, give me all the magic scrolls you have. Lone Tyrant's eyes were glowing red at this moment. He looked just like a gambler who had lost all his bets and was planning to stake everything on one final throw. Black Flame, you're 100 years too early if you think you can kick me out of the ranking list. Shortly after, Lone Tyrant started hysterically using all sorts of AoE attack magic scrolls, killing the hundreds of monsters his subordinates had lured over. Each and every one of these AoE attack magic scrolls were very precious, and they were normally treated as the guild's strategic material. At this moment, however, Lone Tyrant treated these magic scrolls as if they were toys, using them with wild abandon. Lone Tyrant's experience bar also soared within a short period of time. However, compared to the rise in experience, Lone Tyrant's behavior was simply throwing good money after bad. Everyone from Dark Star felt their hearts ache at this sight. They had managed to obtain these magic scrolls only after going through many difficulties. Now, however, all their efforts had gone to waste in order to allow Lone Tyrant to quickly level up. Despite their heartache, the members of Dark Star could do nothing about the situation. After all, the person holding the position of guild leader was not them but Lone Tyrant. Many people started regretting their decision to join Dark Star instead of Zero Wing. With such a selfish guild leader, would Dark Star even possess a future? In contrast, Black Flame, the guild leader of Zero Wing, had not hesitated to charge to the rescue in order to save his brothers and sisters in arms from being bullied. Back when the core members of Zero Wing had been surrounded inside the Silverleaf Forest, Black Flame had ventured into enemy territory all by himself. Moreover, after the war, he had even spent huge sums of money in order to compensate his own guild members. From Black Flame's actions, one could tell that he was a person who would rather bear the suffering himself than to let his brothers and sisters be wronged. If they could have such a guild leader, so what if they had to suffer? However, just as Lone Tyrant was hysterically using magic scrolls, Zero Wing's 100-man team were also in the midst of killing the remaining level 50 Tier 1 Blood Hand Association elites. In order to deal with these level 50 NPCs, Blackie used Stars of Light, while Shurfeng used Firestorm. Shurfeng's normal guards also used all their AoE skills. The scene of the battle was like Armageddon. Even the level 50 Tier 1 NPCs could not endure this relentless bombardment. Soon after, these Blood Hand Association elites started dying one after another. Simultaneously, the experience bars of everyone from Zero Wing soared like a rocket. The The reason for such rapid leveling was simple. First of all, Tier 1 NPCs gave much more EXP than ordinary NPCs when killed. Second, most of the members of Zero Wing were only level 20, while the rest were only a few levels higher, so the bonus EXP they could obtain from killing a level 50 NPC was munificent. When both of these factors were combined, the levels of Zero Wing's 100-man team naturally increased by leaps and bounds. After several tens of Blood Hand Association elites died, everyone from Zero Wing had risen to level 21 or above, instantly monopolizing all 100 spots on the White River City ranking list. At this moment, every player in White River City fell silent. Zero Wing had done it. Zero Wing had actually fully occupied the top 100 spots of the White River City ranking list. The sight stunned Lone Tyrant. He even forgot to use the magic scroll in his hands. At the same time, a series of system notifications sounded throughout the entire Star Moon Kingdom. Chapter 335 Experts Gathering at White River City. Star Moon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for becoming the first guild to exclusively monopolize the top 10 of a city's ranking list. Rewarding 100 gold coins, 5,000 guild popularity, and 1,000 guild reputation. Star Moon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for becoming the first guild to exclusively monopolize the top 30 of a city's ranking list. Rewarding 200 gold coins, 10,000 guild popularity, and 3,000 guild reputation. Star Moon Kingdom Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for becoming the first guild to exclusively monopolize the top 100 of a city's ranking list. Rewarding Honored Guild title, 500 gold coins, 30,000 guild popularity, and 7,000 guild reputation. Originally, Zero Wing's attempt at monopolizing the ranking list was a matter limited to only White River City. Hence, aside from the players based in White River City, nobody else in Star Moon Kingdom paid any particular attention to this incident. However, the appearance of these three system notifications dumbfounded every player in Star Moon Kingdom. Players who were currently inside a dungeon were no exception. At this moment, everyone was shocked when they saw these system notifications. Just the amount of gold coins rewarded was enough to cause the large guilds of many cities to feel envy and hatred. From the three rewards, Zero Wing had obtained a total of 800 gold coins. At this stage of the game, a large guild would have only around a dozen gold coins and fluid funds. After all, it was not easy to earn in-game currency in God's domain. Although players were reaching higher levels with each passing day and they were making more money than before, their daily expenditures had also increased inadvertently. Simply put, there were too many aspects where one was required to spend money in God's domain. For example, repairing equipment. For example, learning skills. For example, purchasing potions, whetstones, and other necessities for adventuring. Most importantly, hotels and daily meals. Originally, before the first evolution of God's domain, players had no need to rest at a hotel. They also had no need to have meals. However, after God's domain evolved, if players did not rest for long periods of time, their mental state would start to deteriorate. If players did not consume food for long periods of time, although no changes would occur to their character's attributes, their body's physical state would be affected. This, in turn, would reduce a player's efficiency when grinding monsters and leveling. Because of these aspects, players rarely had a lot of money sitting in their pockets. In fact, they had even less money than before the first evolution of God's domain. However, it was also due to this reason that many inconspicuous lifestyle classes had started receiving attention from players and begun to develop rapidly. After all, mainstream lifestyle classes weren't the only lifestyle classes that could make a lot of money. Even non-mainstream lifestyle classes could achieve similar results. As for guilds, they could barely make ends meet. If the various large guilds did not possess big money farming teams of their own, their development would have long since stagnated. To any guild in Star Moon Kingdom, 800 gold was an astronomical sum of money. If others had thought that Zero Wing was a considerably good guild in Star Moon Kingdom before, then from now on, Zero Wing would be very well known as an excellent guild in Star Moon Kingdom. At this moment, posts relating to Zero Wing were flooding the official forums for Star Moon Kingdom, and none of them was not astounded by Zero Wing's achievement. It's Zero Wing again. First, it was the guild residents. Now, they fully occupied the White River City ranking list. That's a feat that not even first-rate guilds have managed to accomplish. Yet, a recently established guild like Zero Wing actually did it. At this rate, won't Zero Wing become the overlord of Star Moon Kingdom? Why can't Zero Wing start recruitment in our city? If they start recruiting, I'll definitely be the first one to sign up. I hear that Zero Wing is about to start another recruitment session again. I think I'll just migrate to White River City. Although I'll have to spend some money if I can join such a good guild, so what if I have to spend some money? Indeed. I hear that the benefits offered by Zero Wing are excellent. Members even have the opportunity to rent out the private rooms inside the guild residence and accumulate double EXP buff. If I can join Zero Wing, even spending 20 silver coins would be worth it. Many players throughout Star Moon Kingdom started entertaining thoughts of joining Zero Wing. Previously, many players had lamented the fact that Zero Wing only recruited members in White River City, and not in other cities. However, as Zero Wing grew increasingly dazzling, the number of players wanting to join the guild would definitely increase as well. If players did not take this chance to join now, the competition in the future might become even more intense. At that time, they might not be able to join Zero Wing even if they wanted to. Moreover, if they joined Zero Wing ahead of time, they could also accumulate guild contribution points quicker and enjoy the various benefits of the guild earlier. Big Brother Shadow Sword, we don't have enough funds for a single person's teleportation fee even if we add both of our assets together. Why don't we skip Zero Wing's recruitment this time and wait for the next one? A tall and slender female guardian knight suggested. The woman was geared in an assortment of common and bronze-ranked equipment. With big, bright eyes, she looked at the stalwart-looking berserker in front of her, adding, "There are also a few first-rate and second-rate guilds recruiting in Greenstone City right now. With our strength, we should have no problems joining those guilds. So, why bother spending so much money to go to White River City?" Turtledove, you don't understand. I'm not rushing to join Zero Wing because of their fame. Instead, I plan to join them in order to improve my strength. All these years, I have been stuck at a bottleneck and never managed to break through. When I watched Black Flame's and Yifeng's battle videos, I learned a lot from them. However, the things one can learn from watching a video will always be limited. If I wish to further improve myself, I need to go and personally experience such battles. Meanwhile, joining Zero Wing would be the fastest way to do so, the berserker named Shadow Sword explained as he shook his head. If we lack money, then I'll just use all the credits I've previously saved up to buy some silver coins. We should have enough by then. Big Brother Shadow Sword, you can't. You saved that money in order to join the city fighting competition. The female guardian knight named Turtledove argued anxiously. Shadow Sword waved his hand softly saying, "You don't need to worry about this. If I can't raise my current strength, I would only become a joke by joining the fighting competition." I understand, Turtledove nodded helplessly. At the same time, many players throughout Star Moon Kingdom started planning a trip to White River City. Every one of these players had reached a certain standard. After all, the teleportation fees required to go to White River City were not cheap. Being able to gather so much money was also proof of one's own abilities. While everyone in Star Moon Kingdom were discussing Zero Wing, Creek Town Blood Hand Association stronghold. Under Shifeng's lead, Zero Wing's 100-man team and the 48 level 50 tier 1 guards had cleared out all the Blood Hand Association knights inside the stronghold and arrived before the doors leading to the hidden warehouse. The doors to the Blood Hand Association's hidden warehouse were made of extremely tough steel. The pair of thick doors was not something that could be pushed apart by only a handful of players. The result would be the same even if Shifeng, someone who possessed staggering amounts of strength, was included. Let's open it together. Following Shifeng's command, everyone started pushing against this pair of large doors. After combining the strength of all the players and level 50 tier 1 guards, the team only barely managed to push apart the large doors. Moreover, the speed at which the doors were opened was extremely slow. After spending over a dozen minutes pushing, the team finally succeeded in pushing these large doors apart completely. Simultaneously, the space inside the hidden warehouse also appeared before everyone. The space inside the hidden warehouse was extremely large and commodious, just like a gymnasium. Tens of metal pillars lined the walls of the building. At this moment, however, nobody paid attention to the appearance of the hidden warehouse. Instead, all eyes were focused at the center of the open space. That area had a small mountain of treasures piled up there. With a single glance, one could immediately discover many treasure chests sitting in the mountain of gold. Just the treasure chests that could be seen on the surface already numbered in the tens. Moreover, a majority of these treasure chests were of mysterious iron rank. There were even some secret silver treasure chests. Guild leader were rich. Blackie drooled as he looked at all those treasure chests, as well as the gold coins and various other items scattered around the hidden warehouse. Is this the reward for completing the Crusade quest? Although Aqua Rose was a wealthy princess herself, she was still shocked at the sight of the mountain of treasures before her. Only now did she truly understand why Shifeng had said the Crusade quest deposit of 30 gold coins was a very cheap price to pay. Compared to the mountain of gold before her, 30 gold coins was not worth mentioning at all. At this moment, Snow Goose's eyes were practically shining. She could not help but wish she could immediately charge up and dive into this mountain of gold. However, Snow Goose did not rush forward. As the location the Blood Hand Association used to store its treasures, this hidden warehouse would naturally have guards. A total of 8 mechanical watchers and 1 mechanical slayer was standing at the periphery of the mountain of treasure. Moreover, there was also a magic barrier layered over the mountain of treasure. Unless one removed this magic barrier, nobody could even think of getting the treasure. It seems we can only obtain the treasure after defeating these mechanical guards. Shifeng's gaze slowly shifted towards the 9 gigantic mechanical guards. Chapter 336 Mutant. The hidden warehouse was the most important location of the Blood Hand Association. After all, the warehouse stored all of the treasures the Blood Hand Association had collected over the many years. Naturally, the security of this hidden warehouse would also be the most intense. The NPCs outside of this hidden warehouse would, at most, comprise 40% of the Blood Hand Association's combat power. Meanwhile, the remaining 60% would be the 9 giant mechanical guards guarding inside the hidden warehouse. The combat power of these 9 mechanical guards alone surpassed that of thousands of NPCs. One could just imagine how powerful these robots were. Mechanical Watcher, Lord Rank. Level 30. HP 1, 500, 000/1, 500, 000. Mechanical Slayer, High Lord Rank. Level 50. HP 9, 000, 000/9, 000,000. Everyone felt their hearts grow cold when they saw the shining pitch-black bodies of the mechanical watchers. In team dungeons, Lord-ranked monsters were all categorized as bosses. As field bosses, although these mechanical watchers had less HP than team dungeon bosses of the same level, their attack power and defense was far superior. Field bosses were much stronger than dungeon bosses of the same level, and a dozen players were no match for them. As for the High Lord-ranked mechanical slayer, a boss of such rank would only appear in 20-man Hell Mode team dungeons or 50-man Hard Mode team dungeons. Moreover, the mechanical slayer before them was a level 50 High Lord ranked boss. It was simply impossible for a group of level 20 players to kill it. The level suppression alone would render the players utterly helpless. To put it simply, even if the mechanical slayer stood still without taking action, Shifeng's 100-man team still could not kill it. I'm afraid that our combat power might be a little lacking? Aqua Rose concluded helplessly after observing the 9 mechanical guards. They would need around 50 level 30 players to deal with a single mechanical watcher. In other words, they would need around 400 players to deal with the 8 mechanical watchers before them. Moreover, all 400 players needed to be level 30. As for the mechanical slayer, under normal circumstances, they would need at least 300 level 50 tier 1 players to raid it. Their current lineup had no hope against such a monster. Moreover, these 9 mechanical guards would definitely work together to repel intruders. At that time, Shifeng's team would not even amount to dust in the face of these guards. Shifeng examined his surroundings. There were many iron pillars situated around the hidden warehouse. Moreover, they were incredibly dense and almost indestructible. Meanwhile, mechanical-type monsters all shared a single weakness. Although mechanical-type monsters possessed extremely high magic resistance, defense, and attack power, these monsters usually had very slow movement speeds. Their attack speeds were also very slow. Moreover, the 9 mechanical guards were large, so they could not maneuver between the large iron pillars easily. Suddenly, an idea popped into Shifeng's mind. Fire Dance, take these intermediate frost grenades. At the start of the raid, I want each of you to lure one of these mechanical watchers away. As for the mechanical slayer, leave it to me. Everyone else, attack the mechanical watchers with the NPC guards. Remember, don't let any of these monsters close in on you. Also, remember to dodge these mechanical monsters' skills. Although they move slowly, the skills they possess will make up for their speed. As he instructed his team, Shifeng took out a bunch of intermediate frost grenades and passed them to Fire Dance and 7 other Zero-Wing members with the highest movement speeds. By now, everyone was fully aware of how powerful the frost grenades were. It was especially true when they were used in a team battle. After the war between world dominators, Shifeng had sent Aqua Rose to Blackwing City to buy more of them. However, they had not purchased many intermediate frost grenades. Intermediate frost grenades could deal 800 frost damage to targets that were level 70 or below, freezing them for 5 seconds and reducing their movement speeds by 60% for 12 seconds. However, each intermediate frost grenade cost 10 silver coins. They certainly weren't cheap. Aqua Rose had only purchased 200 intermediate frost grenades. Even so, the total had reached 20 gold coins. The price concerned and distressed her. However, she knew just how powerful these items were. So, even if they were more expensive, they still needed to buy some as a reserve. At this moment, Shifeng couldn't care less about the expense of the intermediate frost grenades. After all, relying on the movement speed reduction and control skills of the NPC guards would not be enough to pin down these mechanical monsters. Following which, Shifeng assigned everyone on the team their tasks. Their main goal was to circumnavigate around the iron pillars and take the chance to kill these slow mechanical monsters, though the main damage dealers would be Shifeng's guards. Begin. The moment Shifeng commanded, everyone took action. To start things off, Fire Dance and the others lured the 8 mechanical watchers away. Shifeng then charged towards the mechanical slayer. When he was only 40 yards away, he threw the blazing meteor at the High Lord-ranked monster. A streak of flame instantly struck the mechanical slayer's forehead. Dang. -2. Shifeng smiled bitterly when he saw the damage that appeared above the mechanical slayer's head. What was a futile action? This was. Faced with the mechanical slayer's 9 million HP, -2 points of damage wasn't even a mosquito bite. When in battle, the mechanical slayer recovered 1% of its HP every 5 seconds. In other words, the mechanical slayer could recover 90,000 HP every 5 seconds. However, Shifeng had already achieved his goal. The mechanical slayer's gloomy eyes suddenly illuminated and flashed red. Immediately, it retrieved the serrated greatsword from its back and slowly advanced towards Shifeng. Although the mechanical slayer's pace seemed slow, due to its gigantic body, each step covered more than a dozen yards. It was not one bit slower than ordinary players. When approaching Shifeng, the mechanical slayer revealed a human-like sneer. Shifeng felt slightly astonished as he had not expected a mechanical-type monster to possess such high intelligence. In the past, he had never encountered a monster like this. Normally, only high-level NPCs would display such behavior. Come, follow me. Let's see if you can get rid of me. Shifeng revealed a calm smile. He then tossed the blazing meteor at the mechanical slayer once more. He activated Windwalk and ran towards a corner of the hidden warehouse, luring the mechanical slayer away from the mechanical watchers. After activating Windwalk, Shifeng's movement speed reached frightening heights. Moreover, Shifeng had also used the aura of wind from the 7 luminaries ring, increasing his movement speed by an additional 20%. However, even with both effects stacked, the mechanical slayer was still faster than Shifeng. The distance that took Shifeng several steps to cross only took the mechanical slayer a single step. When the distance between them shortened to 20 yards, the mechanical slayer abruptly swung its greatsword at Shifeng, wielding it single-handedly. Clearly, there was still a distance of 20 yards between the mechanical slayer and Shifeng. Although the mechanical slayer's serrated greatsword was very large and long, it could not hit Shifeng. Yet, the mechanical slayer still chose to swing its greatsword. When the serrated greatsword descended, it created a loud boom. Even the air surrounding the greatsword compressed and became extremely heavy. Suddenly, tens of air blades shot towards Shifeng. The blades resembled a wall of air pressing down on Shifeng. The gaps between air blades simply did not allow Shifeng any space to evade. Moreover, they covered a frightening range. Shifeng could not dodge them even if he wanted to. Yet, if Shifeng took the attack head-on, the blades would end his life. Defensive blade would not change the outcome. At most, the skill could help Shifeng block 9 air blades. It's using a skill already? As expected, a High Lord won't give players any chances. It would be simply impossible for an ordinary player to escape alive. Shifeng was utterly astonished. He had not expected the mechanical slayer to use such a powerful skill so soon. However, it would be wishful thinking on the mechanical slayer's part if it thought it could kill Shifeng so easily. In the next moment, Shifeng suddenly flew. In the nick of time, Shifeng flew out of the range of the air blades, leaving behind afterimages as he charged towards the closest iron pillar. This was none other than the effect of Wind Rider, the activatable skill of the Aura of Wind. Wind Rider enables temporary flight and movement speed increase of 100% for 15 seconds. Cooldown, 2 minutes. The mechanical slayer bellowed angrily. It actually failed to kill an ant like Shifeng with a single attack. This was simply humiliating. Immediately after, the mechanical slayer no longer wielded its serrated greatsword single-handedly. Instead, it swung the greatsword with both hands now. Boom. The serrated greatsword plunged into the sturdy ground. Suddenly the entire warehouse started trembling. With the mechanical slayer as the epicenter, the ground began to crack. Covering a radius of around 70 yards, streams of air blasted up from the ground, decimating everything in their path. The attack caught one unfortunate level 50 tier 1 guard, killing him instantly. The skill's power dumbfounded everyone. It was simply unbelievable. The level 50 tier 1 guard had over 100,000 HP. Yet he was gone in an instant. This was not Shifeng's first time meeting a High Lord. However, Shifeng could say for sure that a High Lord was definitely not capable of instant killing a tier 1 NPC of the same level. At this moment, several thousand level 50 tier 1 players would not be enough to kill the mechanical slayer. Fortunately, Shifeng had Wind Rider activated, so he barely managed to escape the mechanical slayer's skill. At this moment, when Shifeng looked at the mechanical slayer again, Shifeng was shocked to discover a cruel smile on its face. Seeing this, Shifeng thought of an unlikely possibility. Suddenly, Shifeng's body shivered as it was overcome with a terrifying chill. This is not good, it's a mutant. Everyone leave the warehouse immediately. Run as far as you can. Shifeng shouted. At this moment, various emotions passed through Shifeng's heart. Originally, Shifeng had everything under his control. However, he never would have expected that such a thing would occur. To begin with, it was simply impossible for this kind of thing to exist at this stage of the game. Yet, it had actually happened. Although Shifeng's command confused his guildmates, they carried it out without hesitation. Following Shifeng's command, everyone ran from the hidden warehouse. At the same time, Shifeng also tasked his normal guards to stay behind and pin down the mechanical slayer, allowing everyone the chance to escape. In the face of the mechanical slayer, however, the level 50 tier 1 guards, which had been insurmountable existences to players, could not last a single hit. Guild leader, what is going on? Aqua Rose dared not believe her own eyes right now. The level 50 tier 1 guards were actually dying with a single hit. A single hit. At this moment, Aqua Rose wasn't the only person present who had questions. Everyone in the team was dazed and confused. Such a powerful monster no longer belonged to the category of a High Lord. However, at this moment, nobody had the time to ask their questions. Over a dozen guards sent to hold back the mechanical slayer had already fallen. Moreover, from beginning to end, only a few short seconds had passed. Don't ask. Just run. Run as far as you can. Absolutely do not turn back. Shifeng shouted as he tossed an intermediate frost grenade. Currently, Wind Rider was still in effect. So, Shifeng took advantage of his speed to delay the mechanical slayer as much as he could. Originally, an intermediate frost grenade could deal 800 frost damage to monsters level 70 or below and freeze them for 5 seconds. However, when used on the mechanical slayer, the intermediate frost grenade had only dealt minus 100 damage. The freezing effect only lasted for 1 second. Although it was only 1 second, it was effective enough for Shifeng. Fortunately, the cooldown between uses for the frost grenades was also 1 second, allowing Shifeng to freeze the mechanical slayer perpetually. Shifeng tossed one frost grenade after another, delaying the mechanical slayer for over 20 seconds. At this time, his team had finally left the hidden warehouse. Guild leader, we've left the warehouse, Fire Dance said in the team chat. No. I told you to run as far as you can. Leave Creek Town immediately. Shifeng said. Presently, nobody but Shifeng knew what the appearance of a mutant signified. However, Shifeng did not have the time to explain at the moment. If they did not run fast or far enough, the consequences would be dire. Chapter 337, Unfathomably Deep. Listening to Shifeng's anxious tone, everyone from Zero Wing knew that the situation was not as simple as it appeared. Since Shifeng had issued his command, none of them would tarry. One after another, they quickly ran for the entrance of the Blood Hand Association's stronghold. The Mechanical Slayer's strength was simply too terrifying. Not only did it possess region-scale destruction skills, but it could also kill level 50 Tier 1 NPCs with a single hit. If it had only been a region-scale destruction skill, they could have dealt with it. The key thing was that even the Mechanical Slayer's basic attacks could instantly kill an NPC guard with over 100,000 HP. At this stage of the game, players had no hope of defeating the Mechanical Slayer. Guild leader, be careful. Fire Dance could not help but tighten her fists, reluctance filling her heart. Yeah, Shifeng gave a simple reply. At the moment he could not relax as he had before. His current enemies were not limited to just the Mechanical Slayer. They also included the 8 other Mechanical Watchers. Previously, these Mechanical Watches had run out of the hidden warehouse in pursuit of the other members of Zero Wing. However, after everyone escaped from the hidden warehouse, these Mechanical Watchers rushed back to deal with Shifeng. It was extremely challenging for Shifeng to slow the Mechanical Slayer's movements while simultaneously dodging the attacks of the 8 Mechanical Watchers. When all was said and done, Shifeng was only a level 24 Tier 0 swordsman. Only by activating all the life-saving skills he possessed could he barely avoid death. However, he was about to run out of gas. Damn you fools. I'm clearly helping you right now, yet you idiots are trying to kill me. Since you all wish for death so badly, I'll grant you your wish. Shifeng looked at the 8 Mechanical Watchers that only focused their attacks on him in anger. Then, instead of throwing the intermediate frost grenade in his hand at the Mechanical Slayer, Shifeng aimed it at the Mechanical Watchers charging at him. Have fun with each other. Damn you bastards. After freezing the 8 Mechanical Watchers, Shifeng retrieved a speed scroll from his bag and used it. His movement speed soared once more. He then charged directly towards the hidden warehouse's entrance. You will all die. The Mechanical Slayer let out a mechanical roar after escaping its icy imprisonment. The entire warehouse trembled at its mighty roar. Instantly, the Mechanical Slayer strode forward and charged at the escaping swordsman. While moving forward, however, the Mechanical Slayer found itself blocked by the 8 frozen Mechanical Watchers. Without a shred of hesitation, the Slayer swung its great sword at one of its supposed allies. The strike sent one of the heavy, over 6 feet tall Watchers flying. Making 8 quick successive swings, the Mechanical Slayer sent all 8 Mechanical Watchers into the warehouse's walls. Such horrifying damage, it is as expected of a mutant. At this moment, Shifeng finally managed to glimpse of the Mechanical Slayer's real damage. A basic swing from its greatsword devoured more than 300,000 HP from each of the Mechanical Watchers. In other words, the Mechanical Slayer could easily kill a level 30 Lord-ranked Mechanical Watcher with only 5 basic attacks. With such strength, the Mechanical Slayer could effortlessly massacre a starter town. It seems that fleeing to a town is out of the question. Shifeng frowned as he gauged the Mechanical Slayer's combat power. Mutants were a special existence in God's domain. They were not bound by the logic of the game. Normally, mutants were born from mutated monsters. However, a mutant spawn rate was as low as that of obtaining a lucky stone in God's domain. The system's laws had no effect on these mutants, and they were completely independent creatures. They could wander about to any region, and they would attack and destroy any living being they come across. In Shifeng's previous life, every time a mutant appeared in God's domain, a disaster would follow. Mutants were like the various natural disasters in the real world, and they were not something that a single player could deal with. Mutants possessed an intellect several times higher than normal monsters, and they were practically on the same level as a high-level NPC. In addition, when a monster mutated, their combat power would increase by several folds. Shifeng had met with a mutant in the past. The mutant had originally been a level 80 common monster. However, after it mutated, it had instant-killed the level 75 Tier 2 player who had been its opponent at the time. If a level 75 Tier 2 player possessed incredible techniques, soloing a level 80 Lord-ranked monster was only a matter of time. Naturally, if such a player wished to escape, they would have no problems doing so. Yet, faced with a level 80 common monster, the level 75 Tier 2 player had no chance to flee. Of course, one of the reasons for that player's demise was negligence. However, the fact that a level 80 common monster was capable of instant killing a level 75 tier 2 player clearly displayed how much more powerful it became after becoming a mutant. Following which, that mutated common monster had become the nightmare of players. By the time everyone was aware of the mutant's existence, over 10,000 players had died at its hands. More importantly, the mutant monster grew stronger the more it killed. This incident had attracted the attention of many large guilds. Based on everyone's knowledge, the more powerful a monster was, the better was the quality of the items it dropped. This was an iron law of God's domain, and even mutants should have been no exception to this law. Since this mutated monster was so powerful, being even stronger than a high lord of the same level, its loot would be magnificent. Hence, the various guilds at the time had sent their own armies to hunt this mutant. At that time, over 100,000 players had been dispatched, and all of them were above level 70. There were even tier 2 professional experts among them. The battle between the mutant and the player army had shaken the heaven and earth. A starter town had even been decimated as a result of that war. Although the player army had successfully killed the mutant in the end, the losses they suffered were tremendous. Out of the 100,000 players sent out, less than 3,000 survived. Meanwhile, the mutant before Shifeng right now had mutated from a High Lord monster. Currently, the Mechanical Slayer was just a newborn. Its strength was at its weakest right now. Shifeng did not dare imagine how powerful it would become once it matured. In the past, a level 80 common mutant had grown to be able to wipe out over 90,000 players from a 100,000 strong army. Moreover, some of those players had been tier 2 experts and everyone's levels at that time were not much different than the mutants. Meanwhile, although the Mechanical Slayer before Shifeng was only level 50, not a single player had reached level 40 yet. To put it simply, the Mechanical Slayer was invincible against players. During the time Shifeng took to escape the hidden warehouse, the Mechanical Slayer had taken care of all 8 Mechanical Watchers. Finished with the nuisances, the Mechanical Slayer renewed its charge at Shifeng. So fast. Shifeng hurriedly threw a frost grenade at it. This time, however, the Mechanical Slayer had not fallen for the same trick. With nimble steps, it easily avoided the intermediate frost grenade Shifeng had thrown. Damn. It's those Mechanical Watchers' fault. Shifeng's anger grew. In the beginning, when the Mechanical Slayer had just awoken, its intellect had still been considerably low. Hence, it failed to dodge the first frost grenade. Moreover, as long as Shifeng's stock of intermediate frost grenades did not run out, he could freeze the Mechanical Slayer for an indefinite amount of time. Now, however, this strategy was no longer viable. Almost immediately, the Mechanical Slayer caught up to Shifeng, its serrated greatsword coursing its way towards him. Currently, the hallway Shifeng was in only had one path. There was nowhere to dodge and death was all but inevitable. Shifeng had no choice but to bet everything he had, pointing the abyssal blade at the Mechanical Slayer. Abyssal bind. 9 pitch-black chains suddenly sprouted from the ground, binding the Mechanical Slayer. Ow! Oh! The Mechanical Slayer struggled madly, and in the blink of an eye, it shattered one of the chains. Soon the second and third chain broke apart as well. At this moment, the chains of abyssal bind that had never failed Shifeng until now seemed as fragile as strips of paper. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.